we explore the question that sits at the heart of the Harry Potter story, but that the books never quite ask. What if the person who loved Harry most had been the one to raise him? Not Dumbledore, who loved Harry strategically. Not the Dursleys, who didn't love him at all. Hagrid, Rubeus Hagrid, who carried a baby from the ruins of Godric's Hollow and flew him across the country on a borrowed motorcycle and cried the entire way. What if Hagrid had looked at that baby and decided that no one was going to hurt this child? Not Voldemort, not Death Eaters, not a family of muggles who kept their nephew in a cupboard. What if the half-giant with the broken wand and the heart the size of a continent had done the one thing Albus Dumbledore didn't expect? Said no? This is a story about love that isn't enough and becomes enough anyway. About a man who isn't qualified to raise a child and who raises one. About the difference between the parent you need and the parent who needs you. November 1st, 1981, Hagrid delivered the baby to Privet Drive as instructed. He handed Harry to Dumbledore on the doorstep at midnight, and Dumbledore placed the baby on the mat with the letter, and McGonagall objected. "You can't mean to leave him with these people, Dumbledore." And Dumbledore explained about the blood protection, about Petunia, about the ancient magic of a mother's sacrifice anchored through a sister's blood. Hagrid stood on the pavement and watched Dumbledore set the baby down, and he cried. He'd been crying since Godric's Hollow, since the ruined house, since the bodies, since the baby in the crib with the bleeding scar. He'd cried on the motorcycle, and he was crying now. The enormous, uncontained weeping of someone who felt things at a scale that matched his body. There, Hagrid, Dumbledore said. Harry will be safe here. Hagrid nodded. He blew his nose into a tablecloth-sized handkerchief. He got on the motorcycle. He flew back to Hogwarts. He did not sleep. 3 days later, Hagrid went back. Not because Dumbledore had asked him to, not because anyone had assigned him a welfare check. Because Hagrid was Hagrid. And Hagrid could not leave a creature, any creature, let alone a baby he'd carried across the country, without checking. He walked to the edge of the Hogwarts grounds at dawn. He apparated, badly, because Hagrid's magic was unpredictable, and because side-along apparition with nobody along was the only kind he could manage. He appeared in the alley behind Privet Drive with a crack that startled a cat and set off a car alarm 2 streets away. He walked to number 4. He looked through the window. Harry was in the cupboard under the stairs. Hagrid didn't understand what he was seeing at first. He saw the door, the small door, the cupboard door, with the latch on the outside. He saw the blanket through the gap. He heard the sound, the faint, thin crying of a baby who had been crying for a long time and who was running out of the energy to continue. He opened the front door. The lock was nothing. Hagrid's hand on a muggle lock was the hand of someone for whom most physical barriers were suggestions. The door opened. The hallway was dark. The cupboard was on his left. He opened the cupboard door. Harry was inside, on the floor, on a blanket, in the dark. 15 months old. The scar was red and new. The crying was weak. The letter from Dumbledore was on the hallway table. Unopened, Hagrid looked at the baby. He looked at the cupboard. He looked at the hallway of this clean, ordinary muggle house where a baby had been put in a cupboard under the stairs 3 days after being left on a doorstep. Hagrid was not a complicated man. He did not think in strategies or political calculations or the long-term implications of ancient blood magic. He thought in the language that had governed his entire life, this creature needs help. I can help. So I will. He picked Harry up. He wrapped him in his coat, the enormous moleskin coat that could have held 4 babies, and that was, at this moment, holding the one baby in the wizarding world who mattered most. He walked out of the house. He did not leave a note. The hut. Hagrid's hut at the edge of the Forbidden Forest was not designed for a baby. It was designed for Hagrid, which meant it was designed for a person who was 8 feet tall and who shared his living space with a boarhound and an assortment of magical creatures whose housing arrangements were, at best, informal. Hagrid modified the hut. Not well. Hagrid's carpentry was like Hagrid's cooking, enthusiastic, oversized, and structurally questionable. But he built a crib from oak beams that would have supported a bridge. He carved it himself, with a knife the size of a short sword, and the crib was enormous, big enough for a baby to grow into a toddler and then into a small child without outgrowing it. He put the crib next to his own bed. He put Harry in the crib. He sat in the chair next to the crib and watched Harry sleep. Fang, the boarhound, came over and sniffed the baby and looked at Hagrid with the expression of a dog who was not sure what this new creature was, but who was willing to accept its presence if Hagrid accepted its presence. "That's Harry," Hagrid said to Fang. "He's staying with us now." Fang licked Harry's face. Harry stopped crying. Fang lay down next to the crib. Hagrid sat in the chair and watched them both and thought about what he'd done. He'd taken a child from the place Dumbledore had put him. He'd overridden the judgment of the greatest wizard he'd ever known, the man who'd given him a home, a job, a purpose after his expulsion. He'd broken whatever blood protection Dumbledore had planned. He knew this was wrong. He knew it in the same way he knew that keeping dragons was illegal and that blast-ended scroots were dangerous. He knew it. And it didn't change anything. Because the thing he'd seen in that cupboard was worse than the wrongness of what he was doing about it. They'd put a baby in a cupboard. He couldn't undo that. He couldn't unknow it, and he couldn't take Harry back, because taking Harry back meant putting him back in the cupboard, and Hagrid would have cut off his own arm before he'd put a baby back in a cupboard. So Harry stayed. The first week was chaos. Hagrid did not know how to take care of a baby. He knew how to take care of creatures, dragons, hippogriffs, thestrals, every magical beast in the forest. But babies were not creatures, and the skills did not transfer as smoothly as Hagrid had hoped. Feeding was the first crisis. Hagrid's food supply consisted of rock cakes, stew of uncertain composition, and whatever he could grow in the garden behind the hut. None of these were appropriate for a 15-month-old. He went to Hogsmeade. He bought milk. He bought bread. He asked Rosmerta at the Three Broomsticks how you fed a baby, and Rosmerta looked at him with the expression of someone who had just been asked a question that raised more questions than it answered. "Hagrid," Rosmerta said, "why do you need to know how to feed a baby?" "Research," Hagrid said. "Research," Rosmerta said. "For a project," Hagrid said. Rosmerta looked at him. Hagrid was not a good liar. Lying required the ability to maintain a position that contradicted the truth, and Hagrid's relationship with truth was the relationship of a person who found deception physically uncomfortable. "Small meals," Rosmerta said. "Warm milk. Soft food. Mashed vegetables. Nothing too hot." "Right," Hagrid said. "Right, thanks, Hagrid," Rosmerta said. "If you've got a baby..." "I haven't got a baby," Hagrid said. "If you've got a baby," Rosmerta said again, "you should probably tell someone." "There's no baby," Hagrid said. He left. He went back to the hut. He mashed vegetables with a spoon the size of a ladle and fed Harry small meals of warm milk and soft food, and the feeding was messy and imprecise, and Harry ate it, and the eating was the first sign that this arrangement, however improbable, was going to work. The second crisis was sleep. Harry didn't sleep through the night. No 15-month-old did. But Harry's nighttime waking was worse than standard because Harry had nightmares. The scar would pulse and Harry would scream. And the screaming was not the crying of a baby who wanted attention, but the screaming of a baby who was experiencing something that no baby should experience. Hagrid held him through the nightmares. He picked Harry up carefully because Hagrid's hands were large enough that the baby was smaller than one palm, and he held him against his chest, and the warmth and the heartbeat and the enormous, gentle pressure of being held by someone the size of a small boulder seemed to help. The screaming would stop. Harry would settle. The scar would fade from red to white. "All right," Hagrid would say in the dark, in the hut, with the fire low and Fang snoring. "All right, Harry, I've got yeah." He said this every night. For years. The secret. Keeping a baby hidden at Hogwarts was objectively one of the most difficult things Hagrid had ever attempted. The school was full of people, students, staff, ghosts, portraits. The grounds were monitored by Dumbledore's enchantments. The headmaster knew everything that happened at Hogwarts. Except he didn't. Not everything. Not the hut. Hagrid's hut existed in a peculiar zone, technically part of the Hogwarts grounds, but practically separate. The way a groundskeeper's cottage was separate from a country estate. The monitoring enchantments covered the castle and the grounds, but the hut was Hagrid's private space, and Dumbledore had always respected that privacy. This respect was about to be tested. Hagrid did not use magic to hide Harry. He couldn't. His broken wand, concealed in the pink umbrella, produced magic that was unreliable at best and explosive at worst. Concealment charms were beyond his capability. Instead, he used the tools he had, the forest, the creatures, and the simple fact that nobody expected Hagrid to have a baby. Harry stayed in the hut during the day. During the evenings and weekends, when the castle was busy and the grounds were occupied, Harry stayed inside. During the early mornings and the deep nights, when the grounds were empty, Hagrid took Harry outside, into the forest, to the lake, to the edges of the property where the air was clean and the sky was wide. Harry's first words were spoken in the Forbidden Forest, at age 2, standing on Hagrid's shoulders, which were at a height that most people needed a ladder to reach, looking at a thestral. "Big," Harry said. "That's right," Hagrid said. "That's a thestral, Harry Beautiful, isn't she?" "Big," Harry said again. "Yeah," Hagrid said. "She's big. Like me." Harry looked at Hagrid, at the face that was the first face he remembered, the dark eyes, the wild beard, the enormous smile that happened when Hagrid was happy, which was frequently. "Da," Harry said. Hagrid went very still. "Da," Harry said again, reaching for Hagrid's beard. Hagrid's eyes filled. The tears, Hagrid tears, which were proportional to Hagrid, ran down his face and into his beard, and Harry grabbed the beard and laughed. "Yeah?" Hagrid said. "Yeah. All right. Da." He never corrected it. Harry called him Da from age 2 onward, and Hagrid answered to it. And the word was the word, and the thing it described was the thing it described, and Hagrid did not have the emotional architecture to deny either. Year 1 of The Secret. Harry at 2. The challenges multiplied with Harry's age. A 15-month-old baby stayed where you put him. A 2-year-old did not. Harry was mobile, curious, and possessed of the relentless determination of a toddler who had decided that the world was interesting and who was going to investigate it regardless of what the world thought about that. Harry escaped the hut for the first time in March. Hagrid had gone to feed the hippogriffs, a 10-minute job that required leaving the hut and walking to the paddock behind the pumpkin patch. He'd left Harry in the crib, which was Hagrid built and therefore approximately the size of a small boat with Fang as a guard. Harry climbed out of the crib. Harry opened the door. Harry walked into the grounds of Hogwarts at 2 years old, in a nappy and nothing else, and made it halfway to the Quidditch pitch before Fang caught up with him and stood in his path with the particular expression of a dog who knew this was not allowed. Hagrid found them there, Harry sitting on the ground next to Fang, playing with a stick, completely unconcerned about the fact that he was outside, visible, and potentially discoverable by any of the several hundred people who lived in the castle 200 metres away. "Blimey," Hagrid said. "Harry, ye can't." Harry looked up at him and grinned. The grin was James Potter's grin, the wide, unrepentant, I know I'm in trouble and I don't care grin that Hagrid remembered from James's school days. Outside, Harry said. Yeah, Hagrid said, scooping him up. Outside, which is where you're not supposed to be. Outside good, Harry said. Outside is good, Hagrid said. But outside is also where people can see yay, Harry, and people can't see yay. Why? Harry said. This was the question Hagrid had been dreading. The why of the hiding, the explanation that would have to include Voldemort and the murder of Harry's parents, and the wizarding world's obsession with the boy who lived and Dumbledore's plan, and the blood protection that Hagrid had broken, and the fact that Hagrid was technically a kidnapper. Because, Hagrid said. That's because, Harry? Why because? Harry said. Because Dar says so, Hagrid said. Ander loves Ander knows best. This was not true. Hagrid did not know best about most things. But it was true enough for a 2-year-old, and the true enough held until Harry was old enough for a more complete answer. Dumbledore found out in Harry's 4th year. Not through the monitoring enchantments, not through a report from a staff member, through Mrs. Norris. Filch's cat had been prowling the grounds as Mrs. Norris always did, as Mrs. Norris was designed to do, and had picked up the scent of something in Hagrid's hut that was neither Hagrid nor Fang nor any of the creatures Hagrid was known to keep. Mrs. Norris had reported this to Filch, in the way that cats reported things to their people, by sitting outside the door and yowling until Filch came. Filch came. Filch looked through the window. Filch saw a 4-year-old boy sitting on the floor of Hagrid's hut, playing with a toy dragon that Hagrid had carved from firewood. Filch went to Dumbledore. Dumbledore came to the hut. The knock on the door was the knock that Hagrid had been expecting for 3 years, and that he had hoped, in the irrational way of someone who knew they were doing something wrong, would never come. Hagrid opened the door. Dumbledore was standing on the step. The blue eyes were not twinkling. The expression was not gentle. The expression was the expression of a man who had just learned something that rearranged multiple years of assumptions, and who was managing the rearrangement with visible effort. Hagrid, Dumbledore said. Professor, Hagrid said. May I come in? Dumbledore said. Professor, I can explain. May I come in? Dumbledore said again. Hagrid stepped aside. Dumbledore entered the hut. He saw Harry on the floor, playing with the dragon. Harry looked up at Dumbledore with the unconcerned curiosity of a 4-year-old encountering a stranger. Who's that? Harry said. That's... Hagrid swallowed. That's Professor Dumbledore, Harry. He's the headmaster. Hello, Harry said. Hello, Harry, Dumbledore said. His voice was controlled. The control was visible, the effort of a man who was feeling several things simultaneously and who was choosing which one to express. He looked at Hagrid. 3 years, Dumbledore said. I can explain, Hagrid said. 3 years, Hagrid. I have been searching for this child for 3 years. The Ministry has been searching. The entire wizarding world believes Harry Potter is living with his aunt and uncle in Surrey. I have been monitoring that household remotely through Mrs. Fig, through the Blood Ward indicators, and the indicators have been showing. He stopped. The blue eyes did something Hagrid had never seen, the calculation, the rapid reassessment of years of data in light of new information. The indicators have been showing a presence, Dumbledore said, a magical signature at Privet Drive. But it was not Harry's. It was a residual. The signature left behind when Harry was removed. I didn't mean to, Hagrid, Dumbledore said. Sit down. Hagrid sat. The chair groaned under him. Harry continued playing with the dragon, oblivious to the conversation happening above him. Tell me why, Dumbledore said. Hagrid told him. About the 3 days. About going back to check. About the cupboard. The blanket, the crying, the unopened letter, about taking Harry and bringing him to the hut and building the crib and the feeding and the nightmares and the first words and the 3 years of hiding him in the only place Hagrid had ever called home. Dumbledore listened. He listened the way Dumbledore listened to things that mattered, completely, without interruption, with the focused attention of someone who was processing information at a depth that most people couldn't achieve. When Hagrid finished, Dumbledore was quiet for a long time. "The cupboard," Dumbledore said. "Under the stairs," Hagrid said. "They'd put him in a cupboard, Professor, 3 days after we left him there. A baby. In a cupboard." "I did not know," Dumbledore said. "No," Hagrid said. "Yeh didn't. Because Yeh left him there and Yeh didn't check." The words landed. Hagrid watched them land, watched Dumbledore's face do something that Hagrid had never seen on it before. Not anger, not defense, shame. The specific, controlled, Dumbledore-processed shame of a man who had made an error and who was, at this moment, seeing the full scope of it. "I trusted the blood protection to ensure adequate care," Dumbledore said. "I assumed that Petunia..." "Yea, assumed," Hagrid said. "About a baby." "Yes," Dumbledore said. "I assumed about a baby." The silence in the hut was the silence of a reckoning. The specific, uncomfortable quiet that happened when a person of enormous authority was confronted with the consequences of their assumptions by a person of no authority, who was, on this particular point, completely right. "The blood protection is broken," Dumbledore said. "Has been broken since you removed Harry from Privet Drive." "I know," Hagrid said. "Harry is unprotected," Dumbledore said. "From Voldemort. From Voldemort's followers. From anyone who wishes him harm. He's protected by me," Hagrid said. "Hagrid," Dumbledore said, "with the greatest respect for what you've done, and I mean that genuinely, you cannot protect Harry from what is coming." The Blood Wards put him in a cupboard," Hagrid said. Dumbledore closed his eyes. "What do ye want me to do?" Hagrid said. "Put him back? Take him to Petunia Dursley's house and hand him over and hope they don't put him in the cupboard again?" "No," Dumbledore said. "No, No, then what?" Hagrid said. Dumbledore looked at Harry, at the 4-year-old on the floor, playing with a carved dragon, in a hut at the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Healthy and happy and loved by a half-giant who had broken every rule to keep him safe. "He's well," Dumbledore said. "He's happy," Hagrid said. "He eats. He sleeps, mostly. The nightmares come sometimes. But he's happy, Professor. He laughs. He plays. He talks to the creatures, and the creatures talk back. He's all right. He's all right," Dumbledore said. "Yeah," Hagrid said. "He's all right." Dumbledore sat in Hagrid's hut and looked at Harry and made a decision. The decision was visible on his face, the shifting of calculations, the re-evaluation of plans that had been in place for 3 years. "He stays," Dumbledore said. "What?" Hagrid said. "Harry stays with you," Dumbledore said. "Here, in the hut, under several conditions." "Anything," Hagrid said. "First, I will place protective enchantments on the hut and the surrounding grounds. Not blood wards, the blood connection is broken. But Hogwarts-level protections, anchored through the castle's own magic." "Yes," Hagrid said. "Second, Harry's presence here remains secret. From the staff, from the students, from the Ministry. If it becomes known that Harry Potter has been living at Hogwarts for 3 years, the political consequences I know," Hagrid said. "Third, you will accept help. With the feeding, the clothing, the education. A child needs things that you cannot provide alone." "I've been doing all right," Hagrid said. "You've been doing extraordinarily," Dumbledore said. "But a 4-year-old needs more than rock cakes and thestrals." "He likes thestrals," Hagrid said. "I'm sure he does," Dumbledore said. "He also needs to learn to read." Hagrid looked at the floor. The reading was the thing he knew he was failing at, the education, the letters, the numbers. Hagrid's own literacy was functional but limited, the product of 3 years at Hogwarts before his expulsion. He could read well enough to manage. Teaching a child to read was beyond him. "I'll help," Dumbledore said. "Personally, twice a week. I will come to the hut and I will teach Harry to read and write and do basic arithmetic." "You?" Hagrid said. "Me," Dumbledore said. "The headmaster of Hogwarts is going to tutor a 4-year-old in my hut," Hagrid said. "The headmaster of Hogwarts," Dumbledore said, "is going to try to make up for leaving a baby on a doorstep and not checking on him for 3 days." The shame was in the words, real shame, honestly expressed, which was something Hagrid had not expected from Dumbledore, and which changed the conversation from a confrontation into something else, a partnership. The partnership of 2 people who loved the same child and who were going to raise him together, each contributing what they could. "Thank ye, Professor," Hagrid said. "Thank you, Hagrid," Dumbledore said, "for doing what I should have done." "Yeah, couldn't have known, I should have checked," Dumbledore said. "You checked. 3 days after, you checked. I, in my wisdom and my strategic planning and my confidence in blood magic, did not check. Yeah, we're busy," Hagrid said. "I was wrong," Dumbledore said. "There is a difference." Harry looked up from his dragon. "Da," he said, looking at Hagrid. "Hungry, right," Hagrid said. "Dinner time." He stood up, enormous, filling the hut. "Will ye stay, Professor?" "I've got stew. I would be honoured," Dumbledore said. They ate stew. The 3 of them. The headmaster, the groundskeeper, and the boy. The stew was Hagrid's stew, which meant it was enthusiastic and questionable, and served in bowls the size of soup tureens. Dumbledore ate it without complaint. This was, in its own small way, the most significant thing Dumbledore did that evening. The arrangement. Ages 4-10. Harry grew up in Hagrid's hut under the arrangement that Dumbledore and Hagrid had made, and the arrangement worked because both of them committed to it completely, and because Harry, who was the subject of the arrangement, was a child who thrived on love regardless of how unconventional the delivery system was. Dumbledore came twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, at 7 in the evening after dinner. He sat in Hagrid's second chair, which Hagrid had built for the purpose, and which was the correct size for a normal human, and which had the structural integrity of something Hagrid had built, which was to say it would have survived a direct hit from a charging erumpent. Dumbledore taught Harry to read. This process was slower than it would have been with a conventional teacher, because Dumbledore's teaching method was, characteristically, unconventional. "What does this word say?" Dumbledore said, holding up a card. "Dragon," Harry said. "And this one?" "Phoenix," Harry said. "And this?" Harry squinted. "Hippogriff?" "Very good," Dumbledore said. "And what do all 3 of these creatures have in common?" "They're big," Harry said. "They can all fly," Dumbledore said. "Which is to say, they have the capacity to rise above their circumstances, an important quality in any creature." "That's not a reading lesson," Harry said. "That's a lesson about life." "All reading lessons are lessons about life," Dumbledore said. "The reading is merely the vehicle." Harry learnt to read. He learnt to write in the enormous, blocky handwriting of a child whose earliest model for writing was Hagrid, who wrote in a hand that looked like it had been produced by a seismograph. He learned arithmetic, which Dumbledore taught through puzzles and games and the specific, play-based pedagogy of someone who understood that children learn through engagement rather than instruction. He also learned things that Dumbledore didn't teach, things that Hagrid taught by being Hagrid. He learned about creatures. By age 6, Harry could identify every species in the Forbidden Forest, the Thestrals, the Centaurs, the Unicorns, the Acromantulas, from a safe distance, the Bowtruckles, the Nifflers, He could feed a hippogriff, approach a thestral, and negotiate with a centaur, which was a skill that most adult wizards never acquired. He learned about kindness. Hagrid's kindness was not strategic. It was not the calculated generosity of someone who was building social capital. It was the reflexive, unconditional. Ask nothing in return kindness of someone for whom caring about other creatures was as natural as breathing. Why are ye nice to the acromantulas, duh? Harry asked at 7, after watching Hagrid bring a basket of dead roosters to Aragog's colony. Because they're alive, Hagrid said, and everything that's alive deserves someone being nice to it. Even the ones that could eat you? Harry said. Especially those ones, Hagrid said, because nobody else is going to be nice to them. Harry absorbed this. The philosophy of being nice to things that could eat you was, he would later realize, the single most important lesson anyone had ever taught him. It was the lesson that would carry him through the forest, through the war, through every encounter with a creature or a person that the rest of the world had given up on. He learned about the forest at night. Hagrid took him on patrol, the groundskeeper's rounds, the check of the forest's edges, the monitoring of the creatures, and the health of the ecosystem. Harry walked beside Hagrid in the dark, which was not frightening, because nothing in the forest was frightening when you were with someone the size of a small house who knew every tree by name. That's the oak where Prongs used to sit, Hagrid said, passing a tree at the forest's edge. Who's Prongs? Harry said. Your dad, Hagrid said. James, he could turn into a stag. An animagus. He used to sit under that oak, in stag form, and watch the sunset. My dad was a stag, Harry said. Your dad was a lot of things, Hagrid said. He was brave and funny and sometimes stupid, and he loved your mum more than anything in the world. Tell me about my mum, Harry said. Your mum was the brightest witch I ever met, Hagrid said, and the kindest. She used to come down to the hut, to this hut, Harry, this very hut, and sit where you're sitting and drink tea and talk to me about everything, about her classes and her friends and what she wanted to do after school. What did she want to do? Harry said. She wanted to change things, Hagrid said. She said the wizarding world wasn't fair and she was going to make it fairer. Did she? Harry said. She died first, Hagrid said. But what she did, Harry, what she did for you. That was the fairest thing anyone's ever done. Harry sat in the hut that his mother had sat in and listened to Hagrid talk about Lily Potter and felt the connection, the thread between the woman who had died in a nursery to save him and the man who had found him in a cupboard and taken him to the one place that was his. The hut was Harry's home. Not by design, not the way Dumbledore had designed Privet Drive, with blood wards and strategic purpose, by accident. By Hagrid's accident of love. The education. Ages 7-10. At 7, Harry started asking questions that Hagrid couldn't answer. What are wands made of? Harry said. Wooden and stuff, Hagrid said. What stuff? Harry said. Core stuff, Hagrid said. Phoenix feathers, unicorn hairs, dragon heartstrings. How does the core make magic work? Harry said. It channels it, Hagrid said. Like when water goes through a pipe. What's the theory behind it? Harry said. Hagrid looked at him with the expression of someone who had reached the boundary of their knowledge and who knew it. I don't know the theory, Harry, Hagrid said. I never got that far in school. Why not? Harry said. I got expelled, Hagrid said. 3rd year. Why? Harry said. Hagrid was quiet. The expulsion, Aragog, the false accusation, Riddle's manipulation, was a wound that had never fully healed, and telling the story to a 7-year-old who was asking with pure curiosity was both easier and harder than telling it to an adult. Someone blamed me for something I didn't do, Hagrid said, and I got expelled and me wand got broken. That's not fair, Harry said. No, Hagrid said. It wasn't. Can you fix it? Harry said. Fix what? Hagrid said. The wand, Harry said. Yay can't fix a broken wand, Hagrid said. Once it's snapped, it's... But you still do magic, Harry said. With the umbrella. Hagrid looked at him. At this 7-year-old who had noticed, who had been watching Hagrid's magic for years with the specific, detail-oriented attention of a child who paid attention to everything, and who had identified the pink umbrella as a wand. Yeah, Hagrid said. I do. So the wand isn't fully broken, Harry said. It's damaged. And damaged things can be mended. Hagrid looked at Harry and saw, for the first time, the quality that was going to define this child, the refusal to accept that broken things stayed broken, the insistence that damage was not permanent, the fundamental, stubborn, inherited from James' optimism that things could be fixed. Maybe, Hagrid said. Maybe you're right. I'm usually right, Harry said. That, Hagrid said, is your mother talking. Dumbledore addressed the education gap. Not by sending Harry to a muggle school, the secrecy was too important. By expanding the tutoring. By age 8, Harry's education included reading, writing, arithmetic, basic magical theory taught by Dumbledore, history taught by Dumbledore, from a perspective considerably more nuanced than Binns's, and care of magical creatures by Hagrid, who was the best in the world at this particular subject and who could teach it better than any textbook. He needs more than I can give him, Hagrid said to Dumbledore in one of their evening conversations. Harry was asleep. The hut was quiet. He needs social interaction, Dumbledore said. Peers, other children. I know, Hagrid said. But if anyone sees him when he turns 11, Dumbledore said, when the letter comes, he'll come to Hogwarts as a student. The secret will end. Until then, he's got me and you and Fang and the forest, Hagrid said. And that will have to be enough, Dumbledore said. Is it enough? Hagrid said. Dumbledore looked at the sleeping boy, at Harry, who was 10, who was healthy and educated and loved, who could read and write and identify 20 species of magical creature, who had never been to school or played with another child his own age, who had grown up in a hut with a half-giant and a boarhound and the most powerful wizard in Britain as an evening tutor. I don't know, Dumbledore said. I hope so. That's not very reassuring, Hagrid said. I know, Dumbledore said, but it's honest. The letter. Age 11. The Hogwarts letter came on Harry's 11th birthday, delivered by Owl, addressed to Mr. H. Potter the Hut on the grounds Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Harry held the letter and looked at Hagrid. Does this mean? Harry started. It means, you're going to school, Hagrid said. His face was doing the thing it did when Hagrid was feeling more than he could manage. The crumpling, the eyes filling, the beard quivering with the effort of containing emotion that was too big for containment. I'm going to be a student, Harry said. At Hogwarts, Hagrid said. Where I already live, Harry said. Where ye already live, Hagrid said. He wiped his eyes. Harry, there's things I need to tell ye. Before ye go. About who ye are. About why I know who I am, Harry said. I'm Harry Potter. You're more than that, Hagrid said. You're, Harry, you're the boy who lived. The wizarding world, they know about ye. Everyone knows about ye. Because of Voldemort, Harry said. Hagrid flinched. Ye know about, Dumbledore told me, Harry said. Last year, about my parents. About the curse. About the scar. He told ye, Hagrid said. He said I needed to know before I went to school, Harry said. He said the other students would know, and I should hear it from someone I trusted before I heard it from strangers. Hagrid looked at the floor. The telling, the conversation he'd been dreading for years, the moment when he'd have to explain to Harry about the murder of his parents and the Dark Lord and the prophecy, had already happened. Dumbledore had handled it, because Dumbledore handled things. because that was what Dumbledore did. Yeah, all right, Hagrid said. About it? About what he told, yeah? I'm all right, Harry said. It's a lot, but I'm all right. Good, Hagrid said. Good, Harry said. When I go to school, I'm still coming home to the hut, right, after classes? Hagrid looked at him. At 11-year-old Harry, who was about to enter Hogwarts as a student and who was asking whether he could still come home to the hut that was too small and too rough and too far from the castle for a student to live in, the hut that was home. Of course ye are, Hagrid said. This is your home, Harry. Always has been. Always will be. Good, Harry said, because I don't want to sleep in a dormitory. I want to sleep in my crib. You're 11, Hagrid said. You're too big for the crib. I'll always fit in the crib, Harry said. You built it too big. I built it perfect, Hagrid said. You built it for a giant baby, Harry said. I built it for you, Hagrid said. Harry grinned, the James grin, the one that lit up the hut and that Hagrid had been seeing for 10 years and that never failed to make the hut feel warmer. Thanks, Harry said. Any time, Harry, Hagrid said. Any time. Year 1. Hogwarts. Harry Potter arrived at Hogwarts as a student on September 1st, and the school's reaction was the reaction of several hundred people encountering a myth in person. He walked into the Great Hall with the other first years, and the hall went quiet. And the quiet was the loaded quiet of a room full of people who had been hearing about the boy who lived for 10 years, and who were now seeing him for the first time. Harry had been prepared for this. Dumbledore had spent the summer preparing him. The fame, the expectations, the questions, the staring. Hagrid had prepared him differently. People are going to stare, Hagrid had said, and ask questions, and be weird about it. What do I do? Harry said. Be yourself, Hagrid said. That's all you can do. Be yourself, and the right people will find you. The right people found him on the train. Ron Weasley in the compartment eating sandwiches. Hermione Granger looking for a toad. You're Harry Potter, Ron said. Yeah, Harry said. And you're Ron Weasley. How do you know my name? Ron said. Your brothers are at Hogwarts, Harry said. I've seen them. From the hut. The hut? Ron said. Hagrid's hut, Harry said. I live there. Ron stared at him. You live in Hagrid's hut? Since I was 1, Harry said. But everyone said you were living with muggles, Ron said. Your aunt and uncle? I was, Harry said, for 3 days. Then Hagrid came and got me. Hagrid, the groundskeeper, came and got you, Ron said. He's my Harry said. The silence that followed was the silence of someone processing information that rearranged everything they'd been told. Ron Weasley had grown up hearing about Harry Potter, the boy who lived, the orphan, the child raised by muggles. The actual Harry Potter was sitting across from him saying he'd been raised by the groundskeeper. Hagrid is your dad, Ron said. He raised me, Harry said. So yeah, that's, Ron processed. That's actually brilliant. Why? Harry said. Because Hagrid is. Everyone loves Hagrid, Ron said. My brothers talk about him all the time. He's massive and he's got a dragon fetish and he makes terrible rock cakes and... The rock cakes aren't that bad, Harry said. Really? Ron said. They're terrible, Harry said. But you get used to them. Ron grinned. Harry grinned. The friendship started there, as it always did, as it was always going to, on a train between two boys who had nothing in common except the thing that mattered most. They liked each other immediately, without reservation, without calculation. Hermione came next, the toad, the know-it-all entrance, the rapid-fire questions. Did you really grow up in Hagrid's hut? Hermione said. Yes, Harry said. That's not standard practice for... No, Harry said. It's not. How did you learn to read? She said. Dumbledore taught me, Harry said. Hermione's eyes went wide. Dumbledore, Albus Dumbledore, personally taught you to read? Tuesdays and Thursdays, Harry said. 7 o'clock, in the hut. I have so many questions, Hermione said. I imagine you do, Harry said. Can I sit down? She said. Please, Harry said. She sat. She started asking questions. She didn't stop asking questions for approximately 7 years. The sorting. The hat went on Harry's head and said, Oh, you're an interesting one. Harry gripped the stool. Raised by a Hufflepuff, the hat said. Tutored by a Gryffindor. With a father's courage and a mother's brilliance and a groundskeeper's heart. Where do I go? Harry thought. The question is not where you go, the hat said. The question is where you're needed. And the answer, as it so often is the place that will challenge you most. Not the place where I'll be happiest, Harry thought. Happiness, the hat said, is not a sorting criterion. Potential is. And your potential, the courage, the stubbornness, the willingness to walk into the forest at night because the creature there needs help, that's Gryffindor. Harry walked to the Gryffindor table. He sat down next to Ron. He looked across the hall to where Hagrid was sitting at the staff table. Enormous, tearful, beaming, Hagrid gave him a thumbs up. The thumb was approximately the size of Harry's wrist. Harry grinned. Home was still the hut. Home was always going to be the hut. But school was going to be this table, these people, this place. He was going to be all right. Year 1. The difference. The Harry Potter who had grown up in Hagrid's hut was different from the Harry Potter the wizarding world expected, and the difference was visible from the first day. He wasn't afraid of the forest. This was the thing that distinguished him immediately. In a school where the Forbidden Forest was, by name and reputation. The thing students were warned away from, Harry walked toward it. He knew the forest the way he knew the hut. Intimately, comfortably, with the ease of someone who had been walking its paths since before he could read. You're not supposed to go in there, Hermione said in the first week, when Harry had been heading toward the tree line after dinner. I grew up in there, Harry said. It's forbidden, Hermione said. It's home, Harry said. The forbidden part is for students who don't know it. I know it. That's not how rules work, Hermione said. That's how forests work, Harry said. This was the Hagrid education in action, the understanding of the natural world that trumped institutional rules, the comfort with creatures that most people feared, the specific, practical knowledge of someone who had learned magic not from textbooks but from the forest floor. He could see the Thestrals. He'd been able to see them since he was 2, since his earliest memories, which included the dark, skeletal horses that pulled the school carriages and that most people couldn't see at all. You can see them? Neville said on the first day, staring at the carriages. Yeah, Harry said. They're Thestrals. But you can only see Thestrals if you've seen death, Neville said. Harry was quiet for a moment. The death he'd seen was his mother's. The flash of green light that he didn't remember consciously, but that the Scar remembered, that the nightmares remembered, that the Thestrals had always known. I know, Harry said. He was better with creatures than with people. This was the other difference, the social gap. The cost of growing up with Hagrid and Dumbledore as his only human contacts. Harry could navigate the forest at midnight. He could approach a hippogriff without fear. He could talk to a centaur with the respect that centaurs required. He could not navigate a common room. The social architecture of 11-year-olds was foreign to him. The alliances, the rivalries, the code switching between public and private personas. He didn't understand why Dean and Seamus argued, and then were friends again by dinner. He didn't understand the unwritten rules about who sat where and who talked to whom, and the elaborate invisible structure that children built from nothing. You're weird, Ron said, affectionately in October. I grew up in a hut, Harry said, with a half-giant and a dog. Yeah, Ron said, that explains a lot. Like what? Harry said. Like the fact that you eat with your hands, Ron said, and that you try to pet everything, and that you talked to the centaur in the forest for 20 minutes before Hermione and I could drag you away. Firenze is interesting, Harry said. He knows things about the stars that... He's a centaur, Ron said, in the Forbidden Forest. At midnight. I've known him since I was 4, Harry said. Ron looked at him with the expression of someone who was friends with the weirdest person in the school and who was, against all expectation, completely fine with it. All right, Ron said. The centaur is your mate. I can deal with that. You're my mate too, Harry said. Obviously, Ron said. But I don't read the stars. Neither does Firenze, Harry said. He interprets planetary movements. It's different. I don't care, Ron said. Want to play chess? Always, Harry said. The hut. Evenings? Harry went home to the hut every evening after classes. This was the arrangement, negotiated between Hagrid, Dumbledore and McGonagall, who had been told the secret in Harry's first year because McGonagall was Harry's head of house, and because keeping the secret from McGonagall was something Dumbledore had correctly identified as both impossible and unwise. He goes home to the hut, McGonagall said. Every night. He's lived there for 10 years, Dumbledore said. He's a student, McGonagall said. Students live in their house dormitory. Harry's situation is unique, Dumbledore said. Unique, McGonagall said. You mean unprecedented, inappropriate, and logistically impractical? All of those things, Dumbledore said. And also necessary. McGonagall looked at Dumbledore with the expression she reserved for moments when she disagreed with him, but recognised that disagreeing would not change the outcome. The boy needs to socialise with his peers, McGonagall said. The boy needs to sleep in the place that feels safe, Dumbledore said. The socialisation will come during the day. The evenings are for the hut. You're indulging him, McGonagall said. I'm indulging Hagrid, Dumbledore said, who has raised this child for 10 years and who is not ready to lose him to a dormitory. McGonagall's expression softened. Not much. McGonagall's softening was measured in millimetres. But enough. Very well, McGonagall said. But he attends every class, every meal, every house event. He's a Gryffindor student, not a visiting guest. Agreed, Dumbledore said. Harry attended every class. He attended every meal. He sat in the Gryffindor common room until 9 o'clock every evening, doing homework, playing chess with Ron, listening to Hermione explain things, being part of the social world that his childhood had not provided. At 9, he went home. Through the castle, across the grounds, down the path to the hut. Fang met him at the door. Hagrid was inside, by the fire, with tea and rock cakes. How was school? Hagrid said. Good, Harry said. Learn anything? Hagrid said. Hermione taught me about levitation charms, Harry said. And Ron taught me a rude word. Which rude word? Hagrid said. I can't say it, Harry said. Hermione said I wasn't allowed. Hermione's probably right, Hagrid said. Hermione is always right, Harry said. It's terrifying. Hagrid laughed. The Hagrid laugh, enormous, shaking the hut, making the pots rattle on their hooks. Harry laughed too, because Hagrid's laugh was the most contagious sound in the world. He sat by the fire and ate rock cakes and told Hagrid about his day, and the day was ordinary, and the ordinary was the point. After 10 years of secrecy, after 10 years of hiding, Harry was living an ordinary school life and coming home to an extraordinary home, and the combination was, by any measure, strange and imperfect, and his. Da, Harry said, before bed. Yeah? Hagrid said. Thanks, Harry said. For what? Hagrid said. For the cupboard thing, Harry said. When I was a baby, for coming to get me. Don't mention it, Hagrid said. Really don't. It makes me. His eyes were already filling. Cry, Harry said. I know. You always cry. I'm a sensitive man, Hagrid said. You're a good man, Harry said. The best man. Good night, Harry, Hagrid said. Good night, Dar, Harry said. He went to bed. In the crib, the enormous Hagrid-built oak beam crib that he'd been sleeping in since he was 15 months old, and that he would sleep in until he left Hogwarts, because some things were too important to outgrow. Hagrid sat by the fire and cried, because that was what Hagrid did, and because the crying was love, and because the love was everything. Let us know what you'd like to see next. Years 2 through 5. Growing up Hagrid's way the years at Hogwarts as a student were the years when Harry discovered what he'd missed and what he hadn't. He'd missed childhood friendships, the shared history that other students had, the playdates, the birthday parties, the accumulated years of social experience that taught people how to navigate groups. Harry had to learn this at 11, which was late, and the learning was visible in the way that late learning always was, through mistakes. He said the wrong thing in conversations. He didn't understand sarcasm until Hermione explained it to him in second year. He took people at their word when they were being performative, because Hagrid always meant what he said, and Harry had been raised to assume that everyone did. Not everyone says what they mean, Hermione said, after Harry had taken a Slytherin's fake compliment as genuine and spent an afternoon confused about why people were laughing. Why not? Harry said. Because social interaction is complicated, Hermione said. It's not complicated with Hagrid, Harry said. Hagrid says what he means. Hagrid is unusual, Hermione said. Most people use language to manage relationships rather than to communicate. That seems inefficient, Harry said. It is, Hermione said. Welcome to being human. He hadn't missed fear. The Hagrid education had produced a child who was afraid of remarkably few things, because the things that most children feared, the dark, large animals, strange noises, the forest at night, were the things Harry had grown up with. The forbidden forest at midnight was where Harry felt safest. The dark was where the Thestrals came. This fearlessness was both an advantage and a problem. It was an advantage because Harry could face things that paralysed other students. The basilisk in second year was less terrifying to someone who had been raised around creatures, and the approach to Buckbeak in third year was instinctive rather than learned. It was a problem because the fearlessness extended to situations where fear was the correct response. You walked toward a werewolf, Hermione said, in third year after the shrieking shack. Lupin is a person, Harry said. He's a person who happens to be a werewolf. He was a werewolf at the time, Hermione said. An actively transforming werewolf. Running toward you. I've seen werewolves before, Harry said. In the forest. Hagrid introduced me. Hagrid introduced you to werewolves, Hermione said. When you were 7, Harry said. They're not dangerous if you understand their body language. Harry, Hermione said. That is the most Hagrid sentence anyone has ever said. Thank you, Harry said. It was not a compliment, Hermione said, but she was smiling. Because Hermione loved Harry, and because loving Harry meant accepting that he had been raised by a man whose risk assessment was calibrated for creatures rather than children, and that this had produced a person who was simultaneously the bravest and most reckless human she'd ever met. Second year. The basilisk. The basilisk was the test of everything Hagrid had taught Harry, and the test came at the worst possible time when Hagrid himself was in Azkaban. The Chamber of Secrets opened. Students were petrified. The school was in terror, and Hagrid was arrested, taken from the hut from Harry's home, on the accusation that had haunted him for 40 years, that he had opened the chamber before. That Aragog was the monster, that Hagrid was the threat. Harry watched them take Hagrid. He stood at the window of the hut and watched the Ministry officials lead Hagrid away, and the watching was the worst thing Harry had experienced since the nightmares. Worse, because the nightmares were about things that had already happened, and this was happening now. Da! Harry shouted, running after them. Hagrid turned. The chains were on his wrists, the magically reinforced restraints that the Ministry used for half-giants, because the standard ones weren't strong enough. "All right, Harry," Hagrid said. His voice was steady in the way that Hagrid's voice was steady when he was being brave for someone else. "All right. I'll be back." "You can't take him," Harry said to the officials. "He didn't do anything." "The Ministry has evidence. The Ministry has a 50-year-old accusation that was wrong the first time," Harry said. His voice was 11 years old and shaking and absolutely certain. Hagrid didn't open the chamber. Hagrid wouldn't hurt anyone. "Son, step back. I'm not your son," Harry said. "I'm his." The officials looked at him, at Harry Potter, the boy who lived, the most famous child in the wizarding world, standing in front of them claiming Hagrid as his father. They took Hagrid anyway. Because the Ministry took who the Ministry took, and an 11-year-old's protest didn't change institutional decisions. Harry stood in the empty hut. The fire was dying. Fang was whimpering. The space where Hagrid should have been was enormous, not just physically but emotionally, the absence of the person who had been Harry's constant for 10 years. He went to the forest. Not because it was safe, because it was where he went when things were wrong, because Hagrid had taught him that the forest had answers, and because Harry needed answers. He found Aragog. This was the thing that the Hagrid education had prepared him for, walking into an acromantula colony, into the web-covered clearing deep in the forest, and speaking to the patriarch of a species that most wizards considered unkillable monsters. "Aragog," Harry said. "I need to talk to you." "The boy," Aragog said. The voice was ancient and clicking and produced by a body the size of a small car. "Hagrid's boy. He's been arrested," Harry said. "They're saying he opened the chamber." "He didn't," Aragog said. "I told him 50 years ago. The creature in the chamber is not one of mine. I never saw it. Hagrid protected me." "What is the creature?" Harry said. "I cannot name it," Aragog said. "We do not speak its name. It is the thing we fear most." "A spider fears," Harry processed. "A spider fears, a basilisk. The creature is a basilisk." "The boy is clever," Aragog said. "Like his father." "Which father?" Harry said. "The one who matters," Aragog said. "The one who raised me and raised you." Harry went back to the castle with the information. The basilisk in the chamber. The pipes. The parseltongue. He went down to the chamber with Ron because Ron was his best friend and because best friends went to chambers together, regardless of the cost. The fight with the basilisk was the fight of someone who had grown up around creatures and who understood, at a level that went deeper than training, that even dangerous creatures had patterns, weaknesses, ways of being approached. Harry didn't just fight the basilisk. He talked to it. In Parseltongue, the language that the scar gave him, that he'd discovered at 9 when a garden snake had spoken to him in the forest and he'd answered, Harry spoke to the basilisk in the chamber. "You've been sleeping for 1,000 years, Harry said. "You don't have to do this." The basilisk's response was hunger and loyalty and the deep, ancient programming of a creature that had been created to serve a purpose. The programming was Slytherins, kill the Muggleborns, purge the school, obey the heir. "The heir is dead," Harry said. "The diary is a fragment, not the real person. You're being commanded by an echo." The basilisk hesitated. The hesitation was brief, the programming was too deep, the loyalty too ingrained, but it was there, and the moment of hesitation was the moment Harry needed. The sword of Gryffindor came down. The basilisk died. Harry sat in the chamber afterward with the venom in his arm and Fawkes crying healing tears onto the wound, and he thought about Hagrid. Hagrid would have tried to save the basilisk. Hagrid would have looked at this 1,000-year-old creature and seen not a monster, but a victim. Something that had been created for a purpose it didn't choose and that had been imprisoned for centuries. Harry had killed it. He'd had to. But the thought of Hagrid's face, the disappointment that Harry had killed a creature rather than saving it, sat in him like a stone. When Hagrid came home from Azkaban, cleared, released, the accusations dropped, Harry met him at the door of the hut. There was a basilisk, Harry said, in the chamber. A basilisk, Hagrid said. His eyes went wide. Harry, that's a 60-foot. I killed it, Harry said. Hagrid looked at him. I had to, Harry said. It was attacking students. It was being controlled by a piece of Voldemort. I couldn't save it. Yeah, wanted to save it? Hagrid said. I wanted to try, Harry said. I talked to it. In Parseltongue, I told it the air was dead. I tried to give it a choice. Yeah, tried to give a basilisk a choice, Hagrid said. Between killing students and being free, Harry said. Hagrid's eyes filled. The tears, always the tears, the enormous Hagrid-scale tears that came when love and pride and sadness arrived simultaneously. That's my boy, Hagrid said. I still killed it, Harry said. Yeah, tried first, Hagrid said. Yeah, tried to save it before Yeah killed it. That's, Harry, that's everything. That's what I taught Yeah. Try first. Always try. Even when it doesn't work, Harry said. Especially when it doesn't work, Hagrid said. Because the trying is what makes Yeah different from the people who don't. 3rd year. Buckbeak and the lesson. The Buckbeak situation in 3rd year was, for Harry, not just about saving a hippogriff. It was about proving that the philosophy Hagrid had taught him, be kind to creatures, even the dangerous ones, especially the dangerous ones, could work in the institutional world that the forest didn't care about. Buckbeak had attacked Draco. Draco had provoked Buckbeak by ignoring the rules of hippogriff engagement, the bowing, the waiting, the respect. Draco had been hurt. The Ministry had sentenced Buckbeak to death. They can't kill him, Harry said, in Hagrid's hut. He was defending himself. The law doesn't see it that way, Hagrid said. His voice was thick. Buckbeak was in the paddock behind the hut, chained, waiting. The law sees a dangerous creature that attacked a student. The student attacked first, Harry said. Draco provoked him. Don't matter, Hagrid said. The Malfoy name carries weight. Lucius went to the committee. The committee ruled. The committee is wrong, Harry said. The committee is the law, Hagrid said. Then the law is wrong, Harry said, and wrong laws need to be broken. Hagrid looked at him, at the boy he'd raised, the boy who had been raised in a forest among creatures, with the philosophy that every living thing deserved someone being nice to it. The boy who was now saying at 13 that wrong laws needed to be broken. Harry, Hagrid said. I can't. I'll do it, Harry said. I'll save Buckbeak. You don't have to be involved. If Yay get caught, then I get caught, Harry said. But Buckbeak lives. The rescue of Buckbeak, with the time turner, with Hermione, with the specific, improvised, partially illegal operation that saved both the Hippogriff and Sirius Black, was the moment when Harry's Hagrid education merged with his Hogwarts education. The forest instincts combined with Hermione's intelligence and Ron's loyalty, and the result was a rescue that shouldn't have worked, and that did, because the three of them cared about things that the institutional world didn't. Yes, saved him, Hagrid said, the next morning, standing in the paddock where Buckbeak was no longer chained, because Buckbeak was no longer there. We saved him, Harry said. All of us. Where is he? Hagrid said. With Sirius, Harry said, flying north. Hagrid looked at the empty paddock, at the chain, at the space where Buckbeak had been. Good, Hagrid said. Good, the word was small. The feeling behind it was not. 4th year. The tournament and the dragons. When Harry faced the Horntail in the first task of the Triwizard Tournament, his approach was not what anyone expected. The other champions had fought their dragons, attacked, evaded, used magic to distract or disable. The strategy was standard. The dragon is an obstacle. Overcome the obstacle. Harry didn't fight the Horntail. He approached it, not recklessly, not with the blind courage of someone who didn't understand the danger. With the specific, practiced, Hagrid-trained approach of someone who had spent 10 years learning how to be near creatures that could kill you. He walked into the arena. The Horntail was at the far end, guarding the eggs, including the golden one that Harry needed. The crowd was screaming. The dragon was furious. Harry stopped. He stood at the centre of the arena, and he did what Hagrid had taught him to do with every creature he'd ever encountered. He waited. The waiting was agonising. The crowd went quiet. Confused. Then concerned. Then frightened. The judges were looking at each other. Bagman was narrating. And Potter he's just standing there, ladies and gentlemen. He appears to be. Waiting? The Horntail looked at Harry. The look was the look of a creature that was ready to destroy anything that threatened her nest, and that was evaluating whether this small, motionless thing was a threat. Harry didn't move. He breathed. He kept his eyes slightly averted, not making eye contact, which was a challenge, not looking away, which was dismissal. The middle ground. The creature approached that Hagrid had drilled into him since childhood. "I'm not here for your eggs," Harry thought. Not in Parseltongue, dragons weren't serpents. In the language of body and breath that Hagrid had taught him, the language that all creatures understood. The Horntail lowered her head. 1 inch. 2 inches. The fire in her throat dimmed, not gone, but banked. Harry moved, slowly, not toward the nest, toward the dragon. 1 step. 2. 3. The crowd was silent. Absolutely silent. Harry reached within 10 feet of the Horntail. He extended his hand. The hand was shaking. He was 14, and this was a nesting mother dragon, and the trembling was the honest, appropriate fear of a person doing something that every instinct was screaming against. The Horntail sniffed the air toward his hand. For 3 seconds it worked. The dragon's fire banked. Her posture shifted from aggressive to uncertain. 3 seconds of a creature reconsidering the threat assessment. Then the instinct overrode the hesitation. The Horntail's tail swept. Not a killing blow, not the full force strike she'd use on arrival, but a defensive sweep that sent Harry rolling across the arena floor. Harry scrambled up. The approach had brought him something nobody else had managed. Proximity. He was inside the Horntail's guard, closer to the nest than any champion had gotten without fighting. He didn't run. He summoned his firebolt, the backup plan that Hagrid's training hadn't eliminated, just delayed. The broom came. Harry flew. But he flew differently from how the other champions had. Low, close, inside the dragon's reach rather than above it, because the approach had taught him her patterns. He took the egg on the 3rd pass. The Horntail's fire missed by inches. The arena erupted. Charlie Weasley, in the dragon handler section, was staring with his mouth open. He'd been working with dragons for 5 years. He had never seen anyone approach a nesting Horntail and walk away. "How did he do that?" Charlie said to his colleague. "I have no idea," the colleague said. "I do," Ron said, "from the stands." Hagrid taught him. Hagrid was in the stands, crying, because Hagrid was always crying, and because watching his son walk up to a dragon and not get killed was the kind of thing that produced the specific, overwhelming, pride and terror combination that Hagrid felt about most of Harry's achievements. "That's my boy," Hagrid said to nobody in particular. "That's my boy." 5th year onward. The war and the cost. The later years, the war years, were the years when the Hagrid education proved its worth and its limitations simultaneously. The worth. Harry's fearlessness. His ability to face creatures and situations that would have paralysed someone with a conventional upbringing. His instinct for approaching rather than attacking. his willingness to walk into danger because Hagrid had taught him that the things most people feared were usually the things that needed help most. The limitations: Hagrid couldn't protect Harry from the war. The man who had kept a baby safe in a hut for 10 years could not keep a teenager safe from Voldemort. The tools Hagrid had: love, creatures, the forest, rock cakes, were not the tools that the war required. "I can't help you with this," Hagrid said in 6th year when Harry told him about the Horcruxes. "I don't understand Horcruxes. Soul magic, I don't." "I know," Harry said. "Dumbledore's handling the strategy. Then what do ye need from me?" Hagrid said. "What I've always needed," Harry said. "Home, tea, someone who's happy to see me when I walk through the door." "I can do that," Hagrid said. "I know," Harry said. "That's why I'm here." The Horcrux hunt happened. Harry went with Ron and Hermione into the wilderness, away from Hogwarts, away from the hut. The leaving was the hardest part, not the danger, not the Horcruxes, not the months of camping in rain and cold. The leaving. "Be safe," Hagrid said at the hut door. "September 7th year." "I'll try," Harry said. "Come home," Hagrid said. "I will," Harry said. "Promise me," Hagrid said. "Da," Harry said. "I promise." The promise was the thing Harry carried through the hunt, through the locket's influence, through Ron's departure and return, through the freezing lake and the sword and the months of searching. When the world was at its darkest, when the locket was whispering and the tent was cold and hope was thin, Harry thought about the hut, about the fire, about Fang, about Hagrid saying, "Saul right, Harry, I've got yeah." The thought was a Patronus. Not literally, not the silver stag, but functionally. The memory of love deployed against despair. The forest walk. In every timeline, Harry walks into the Forbidden Forest to die. The walk is the walk, the same destination, the same sacrifice, the same resurrection stone and parents and the choosing of death for the sake of others. But in this timeline, the walk started at the hut. Harry went to the hut before the forest. After learning the truth that the Horcrux in his scar meant he had to die, he went to the hut. Because the hut was home, and because going home before dying was the one thing he needed to do. Hagrid was not there. Hagrid was at the battle, captured by the Death Eaters, bound, forced to watch from the edge of the forest. Harry didn't know this yet. He went to the empty hut. He sat in his crib. At 17 he barely fit. The crib was Hagrid-sized, which meant it was large, but Harry had grown, and the fitting was tight. He sat in the crib where he'd slept since he was 15 months old, and he looked at the hut. The fire was out. The kettle was cold. Fang was gone, taken with Hagrid, or hiding. The hut was empty in a way it had never been empty, because the emptiness was not just physical but anticipatory. This was the last time Harry would be here. He left the hut. He walked into the forest. He used the stone. His parents appeared. "Mum," Harry said. "Harry," Lily said. "Dad," Harry said. "Son," James said. They walked with him. Through the forest that Harry knew better than any forest in the world, the paths he'd walked with Hagrid since age 2, the trees he'd named, the clearings where the Thestrals gathered. "You grew up here," Lily said. "In the hut," Harry said. "With Hagrid." "We know," Lily said. "We watched." "From where?" Harry said. "From wherever the dead watch from," Lily said. "We saw him carry you out of the cupboard. We saw him build the crib. We saw every night he sat up with you when the nightmares came." "He's a good man," Harry said. "He's the best man," James said. "I should have named him Godfather instead of Sirius." "Sirius was my best friend, but Hagrid would have walked into fire for you." "He did," Harry said. "Every day. For 16 years. He reached the clearing. Voldemort was there. And Hagrid was there, bound, weeping enormous tears running into his beard, watching Harry walk into the clearing. "Harry," Hagrid shouted. "No. Harry. No." Harry looked at Hagrid, at the man who had raised him, who had found him in a cupboard and taken him to a hut and built a crib and fed him rock cakes and taught him about creatures and sat with him through nightmares and cried at every achievement and loved him with the total, unconditional, ask nothing in return love that was the most powerful magic Harry had ever known. "It's all right, Dar," Harry said. "It's all right. I've got this." Hagrid was screaming. The screaming was the screaming of a parent watching their child walk toward death, which was the worst sound in the world, which was the sound that the Forbidden Forest would remember long after the war was over. Harry. No. Take M.E. Take M.E. instead. Voldemort raised his wand. Harry looked at Hagrid one more time, at the face that was the first face he remembered, at the tears. "I love you, Dar," Harry said. The curse hit him. He fell. Hagrid carried the body. This was the thing, the devastating, symmetrical thing that the universe produced without apparent effort. 16 years ago, Hagrid had carried a baby from the ruins of Godric's Hollow. Now, Hagrid carried a body from the Forbidden Forest. He carried Harry in his arms. The arms that had held Harry through nightmares, that had built the crib, that had caught Harry when he fell off his first broom, that had hugged Harry on the first day of school. The arms carried the body through the forest and out of the trees and across the grounds to the castle. The crying was not Hagrid's usual crying, not the emotional overflow, not the sensitivity, not the tears that came when Hagrid was happy or sad or overwhelmed. This crying was destruction, the sound of something fundamental being broken. He tried to save a basilisk, Hagrid said to nobody. Walking, he talked to it first. He always tried first. He carried Harry to the castle. He laid him on the ground in front of the entrance. The school was watching, the defenders, the Death Eaters, Voldemort. Harry Potter is dead. Voldemort announced. Neville stepped forward. The sword came. The snake died. And Harry moved. He moved in Hagrid's arms, the slight, impossible, miraculous movement of a person who was not dead, who had gone to King's Cross and chosen to come back, who had been hit by the killing curse and survived it a second time because the love that his mother had given him, the love that Hagrid had amplified and sustained and poured into him for 16 years, the love was stronger than the curse. Hagrid felt the movement. He looked down. Harry's eyes opened. "Ah," Harry said. Hagrid's hands tightened. The reaction was not voluntary, the pure, physical, uncontrolled response of a person whose child has just come back from the dead. "Harry," Hagrid said. "Harry, I'm alive," Harry said. "Put me down. I need to finish this." Hagrid put him down. Harry stood up. The Great Hall erupted. The final duel happened. Expelliarmus versus Avada Kedavra. The Elder One's allegiance. Voldemort's own curse. Rebounding, Voldemort fell. Harry stood in front of the castle that was his school. That was his home. That was the place where his hut was, and he was alive. Hagrid reached him. The hug was Hagrid's scale. Enormous. Crushing. The kind of hug that lifted the recipient off the ground because the hugger was 3 times their size. "Don't ye ever do that again," Hagrid said. "I won't," Harry said. "Promise me," Hagrid said. "I promise," Harry said. "You're lying," Hagrid said. "But I'll take it." After, the hut survived the war. The castle was damaged, walls broken, corridors destroyed, the specific destruction that combat magic produced in ancient stone. But the hut, at the edge of the grounds, at the border of the forest, was untouched. Harry went home that night. Not to the Gryffindor dormitory, not to the Great Hall where the survivors were gathering, to the hut. He sat in his crib. Fang was there, returned, unharmed, the boarhound who had been Harry's companion since he was 15 months old, and who was now elderly and arthritic, and still capable of the same enthusiastic face-licking that had calmed a crying baby 16 years ago. Hagrid made tea. The tea was too strong, and the rock cakes were inedible, and the hut smelled like smoke and wet dog and home. "Sover," Hagrid said. "Yeah," Harry said. "It's over." "What do ye want to do now?" Hagrid said. "Sleep," Harry said. "In my crib." "You're 17, Hagrid said. "You're too big for the crib." "I'll never be too big for the crib," Harry said. Harry slept in the crib that Hagrid had built from oak beams 16 years ago, carved with a knife the size of a sword, big enough for a baby to grow into. Harry was too big for it now. His feet hung off the end and his shoulders were wider than the sides. But he slept in it anyway, because the crib was the crib, and the crib was home, and some things were more important than fitting. Hagrid sat in the chair next to the crib and watched Harry sleep. The way he'd watched Harry sleep since he was 15 months old. The same chair, the same position, the same enormous, gentle, watchful presence. "'S all right, Harry," Hagrid said, in the dark, in the hut, with the fire low and Fang snoring. "'S all right. I've got yeah." The same words. 16 years of the same words. The words that had started in a November night, when a man too large for most doorways had carried a baby too small for most cribs across the grounds of a school and into a hut and decided, with the total commitment of a heart that did not know how to love small, that this child was his. The words were enough. They had always been enough. 5 years later, Harry was 22. He was an aura. He lived in London, in a flat that was too small and too clean and too far from the forest, and he went home to the hut every weekend because the flat was where he lived and the hut was where he belonged. Saturday mornings. That was the tradition. Harry arrived at the hut at 9 o'clock on Saturday mornings, and Hagrid had tea ready and rock cakes that had not improved in 20 years, and Fang the two, now, the successor to the original, equally large and equally cowardly, met Harry at the door. "How's work?" Hagrid said. "Fine," Harry said. "Caught a smuggler on Tuesday, breeding chimeras in a basement in Leeds." "Chimeras," Hagrid said, his eyes lit up. "What kind? Greek standard or modified?" "Da," Harry said. "They're illegal." "I know they're illegal," Hagrid said. "I'm asking about the species." "Greek standard," Harry said. 3 of them. "They've been taken to the reserve in Romania." "Charlie's reserve?" Hagrid said. "Good, Charlie'll take care of them. They're chimeras," Harry said. "They eat people." "They eat people who don't know how to approach them," Hagrid said. "If ye approach right, da," Harry said. "Please don't approach a chimera." "I've approached worse," Hagrid said. "I know you have," Harry said. "That's what worries me." They sat in the hut. The same hut, rebuilt slightly, expanded slightly, but fundamentally the same structure that Hagrid had lived in since before Harry was born. The crib was still in the corner. Harry hadn't slept in it since he was 18, but it was there, and neither of them was going to remove it. Ron came sometimes. Ron at the hut was Ron at his most comfortable, sprawled in the big chair, which was too big for him and which he treated as a small sofa, eating rock cakes because Ron would eat anything, talking to Hagrid about Quidditch and creatures and whether nifflers could be trained as security animals. "They can't," Hagrid said. "They absolutely can," Ron said. "They steal everything that's shiny," Hagrid said. "You can't have a security animal that steals the things it's supposed to be guarding. You train them to only steal from intruders," Ron said. "Ron," Hagrid said, "I've been working with magical creatures for 40 years. You can't train a niffler." "You trained Harry," Ron said. "Harry's not a niffler," Hagrid said. "Harry once stole 12 chocolate frogs from my trunk because they had shiny wrappers," Ron said. "I was 11, Harry said, "and I gave them back." "You ate 4 of them first," Ron said. "I gave back the other 8, Harry said. "Yeah, stole chocolate frogs?" Hagrid said. I was adjusting to having access to sweets, Harry said. You raised me on rock cakes. Real chocolate was overwhelming. Me rock cakes are fine, Hagrid said. Your rock cakes are weapons, Ron said. I chipped a tooth on one in second year. That was an old batch, Hagrid said. They're all old batches, Ron said. I don't think you've changed the recipe since 1970. The recipe is a classic, Hagrid said. Hermione came less often. She was at the Ministry, working on creature rights legislation, which was work that Hagrid followed with the intense personal interest of a man whose entire life had been shaped by the wizarding world's attitude toward creatures. The Centaur Liaison Office is expanding, Hermione said at a Saturday visit. We're adding 3 positions. Centaurs don't want a liaison office, Hagrid said. Centaurs want to be left alone. The office exists to facilitate their being left alone, Hermione said, to create institutional protections against encroachment on their territory. Centaurs protect their own territory, Hagrid said. They don't need an office. They need legal standing, Hermione said. Without legal standing, their territory is just forest that the Ministry can reassign. Hagrid considered this. You're saying the office protects them from the Ministry. I'm saying the office gives them the same legal protections as any other magical territory, Hermione said, by making them part of the system they don't want to be part of. Hagrid said. That's the paradox, Hermione said. Yes, it's a good thing you're doing, Hagrid said, even if the centaurs won't thank Yer for it. Thank you, Hagrid, Hermione said. Firenze'll thank Yer, Hagrid said. Tell him I said hello. You can tell him yourself, Hermione said. He's in the forest. I know where he is, Hagrid said. I always know where he is. The Saturday visits were the architecture of Harry's adult life, the scaffolding that held the rest together, the flat in London, the aura work, the friendships, the relationships. All of these were important, but the hut was the foundation. The hut was the place that had been home since before Harry could walk, and the returning to it every Saturday was the act that said, this is where I come from, this is who I am, this is the man who made me. Ginny. Harry brought Ginny to the hut for the first time in their second year of dating, which was late by normal standards and precisely right by Hagrid's standards. This is Ginny, Harry said. Hagrid looked at Ginny. Ginny looked at Hagrid. The looking lasted 3 seconds and contained, in those 3 seconds, the complete assessment of 2 people who were important to the same person and who were deciding whether they could share him. Arthur Weasley's girl, Hagrid said. Yes, Ginny said. Good family, the Weasleys, Hagrid said. Thank you, Ginny said. Do you like creatures? Hagrid said. I grew up with gnomes in the garden, Ginny said. So yes, gnomes aren't creatures, Hagrid said. Gnomes are pests. I mean real creatures. Hippogriffs, thestrals, dragons. I've ridden a broom at 130 miles an hour in a thunderstorm, Ginny said. Does that count? Hagrid's face broke into the enormous smile. The approval was total and immediate. Ginny had passed the Hagrid test, which was not a test of intelligence or character or social standing, but a test of willingness to engage with the world without flinching. He's good, Hagrid said to Harry. Keep this one. I wasn't planning to let her go, Harry said. You weren't planning anything, Ginny said. I chose you. She chose Yer, Hagrid said. Smart girl. Don't let it go to your head, Ginny said to Harry. Too late, Harry said. They had tea. Ginny ate a rock cake. Ate it, fully, without complaint, which Hagrid noticed and which elevated Ginny's standing in Hagrid's estimation to approximately the level of a phoenix. She ate the rock cake, Hagrid whispered to Harry in the kitchen. I know, Harry said. She's brave. She's perfect, Hagrid said. Don't get ahead of yourself, Harry said. I'm not, Hagrid said. She ate the rock cake, Harry, I know, Harry said. I know. The last Saturday. There would be no last Saturday. That was the point. That was the whole architecture of the thing that Hagrid had built. The hut was permanent. The tea was permanent. The Saturday mornings were permanent. When Harry was 30, Hagrid was 70, and the hut was the hut, and the forest was the forest, and the crib was still in the corner. Harry's children, 2 of them, James and Lily, because some names were inevitable, played in the garden behind the hut while Harry and Hagrid sat by the fire and drank tea. "Grandpa," James shouted from the garden. "James, don't pull the bowtruckles," Harry started. "It's fine," Hagrid said. "Bowtruckles like children. Bowtruckles like tree lice," Harry said. "They tolerate children." "Same thing," Hagrid said. "It is not the same thing," Harry said. "Yay turned out fine," Hagrid said. "And Yay were raised by bowtruckles." "I was raised by you," Harry said. "Same thing," Hagrid said, and grinned. Harry sat in the hut with his children in the garden and his father by the fire, and the years between them, the 29 years since a man had carried a baby from a cupboard to a hut, filled the space like light. "Da," Harry said. "Yeah?" Hagrid said. "Do you ever think about what would have happened?" Harry said. "If you hadn't come back? If you'd left me at the Dursleys?" "No," Hagrid said. "Never?" Harry said. "Never," Hagrid said, "because it wouldn't have happened. I was always going to come back, Harry. I was always going to check on Yare. It's who I am." "I know," Harry said. "I check on things," Hagrid said. "On creatures, on people, on babies left on doorsteps. I check because that's what Yare do when Yare care about something." "Yeah, check." "And you found me in a cupboard," Harry said. "Anne, I found Yay in a cupboard," Hagrid said. "Anne, I brought Yay home." "Home?" Harry said. "Home," Hagrid said. The fire crackled. Fang too snored. In the garden, James was introducing Lily to a bowtruckle, which was going about as well as introductions to bowtruckles usually went, which was to say the bowtruckle was tolerating the children with the patient irritation of a creature that preferred insects. Harry was home. Had always been home. Would always be home. Not in the building, not in the hut specifically, but in the proximity of the man who had built it and who had decided on a November night 29 years ago that love was more important than instructions. Hagrid had been right about that. Hagrid was right about most things when the things were about love. This is the story of the simplest magic and the most powerful one. A man who couldn't do proper magic, whose wand was broken, who wasn't qualified to teach or to parent or to protect a child from a dark lord, who did all of those things anyway, through rock cakes and tea and the enormous unconditional love of a person who didn't know how to love small. He checked. That's all he did. 3 days after, he went back and he checked. He found a baby in a cupboard. He brought the baby home. He never stopped bringing the baby home. That was enough. That was everything. That was all the magic anyone ever needed. Let us know what you'd like to see next. Expanded threads Sirius and the man who kept his promise when Sirius Black escaped from Azkaban in Harry's 3rd year. The first thing he did, before the Shrieking Shack, before Pettigrew, before any of it, was go to the hut. Harry was at dinner. The hut was empty except for Fang. Sirius, in dog form, pushed through the door that Hagrid never locked because Hagrid trusted the forest and the forest trusted Hagrid. He waited. In dog form. On the rug by the fire, Hagrid came home at 8 o'clock, carrying a bucket of ferret food for the creatures in the paddock. He walked in. He saw the dog. He stopped. Hagrid knew dogs. Hagrid knew every animal in the British Isles by sight, sound and smell, and the dog on his rug was not a dog. The size was wrong, too large for a stray, too thin for a pet. The eyes were wrong, too intelligent, too focused, watching Hagrid with the awareness of a mind behind them. Sirius, Hagrid said. The dog became a man. Sirius Black, gaunt, hollow, 12 years of Azkaban written on his face, stood in Hagrid's hut and looked around. He saw the crib. The crib was against the wall, the enormous oak beam. Hagrid-built crib that had been Harry's bed since he was 15 months old. It was unmistakable. It was the crib of a child who lived here. "You kept him," Sirius said. "Yeah," Hagrid said. "Here," Sirius said. "In the hut." "Yeah," Hagrid said. Sirius looked at the crib for a long time, at the blankets, the pillow, the carved wooden dragon that sat on the headboard, at the evidence of 12 years of childhood that had happened in this room. "I asked Narcissa," Sirius said. Before, I was going to ask Narcissa to take him." "I know," Hagrid said. "But Yeh didn't get to her. Yeh went after Peter instead." "And you went back," Sirius said. "To Privet Drive." 3 days after, Hagrid said. "I checked. And you found a cupboard?" Hagrid said. They'd put him in a cupboard. Sirius's face did something that was not an expression. It was the absence of an expression, the controlled blankness of someone who was hearing something that, if allowed to produce the correct emotional response, would destroy the control he was barely maintaining. "So you took him," Sirius said. "So I took him," Hagrid said. "For 12 years, Sirius said. "For 12 years, Hagrid said. Sirius sat down. The sitting was not voluntary, his legs gave out. He sat on the floor of Hagrid's hut, and he put his face in his hands, and the sound he made was the sound of a man who had spent 12 years in Azkaban, believing that his godson was living in a muggle cupboard, and who had just learned that his godson had been living in a hut with a half giant who had built him a crib out of oak beams. "Thank you," Sirius said. Into his hands. Barely audible. "Don't mention it," Hagrid said. "Really, it makes me cry," Sirius said. "I remember." "Yeah," Hagrid said. They sat in the hut, the escaped convict and the groundskeeper, and the 12 years between them were the 12 years between a man who should have protected a child and a man who did. "Can I see him?" Sirius said. "He's at dinner," Hagrid said. "He'll be back at 9. I look, Sirius gestured at himself, at the prison clothes, the gauntness, the 12 years of Dementor's quality that was visible in every line of his face. "Yeah, look like someone who's been in Azkaban for 12 years, Hagrid said. "Which is what ye are." "I don't want to scare him," Sirius said. "Harry doesn't scare easy," Hagrid said. "I raised him in a forest." Harry arrived at 9. He walked through the door and saw Sirius, and his hand went to his wand, not from fear but from the trained readiness of someone who had grown up in the forest and who responded to unexpected presences with alertness rather than panic. "Harry," Hagrid said, "put your wand away." "This is Sirius Black," Harry said. "I know who he is." "How?" Sirius said. "Dumbledore told me," Harry said. "Last month. When the escape was announced, he told me who you are and what you were accused of, and that you're my godfather." "Did he tell you I didn't do it?" Sirius said. Harry looked at him. At the man on the floor of his father's hut, because the hut was his father's, Hagrid's, and Harry thought of it that way, and the looking was the looking of someone who had been raised to assess creatures before judging them. "He told me the evidence was complicated," Harry said. "He said I should form my own opinion." "What's your opinion?" Sirius said. "You're sitting on my father's floor," Harry said, "in his hut, where I grew up. If you were dangerous, Hagrid wouldn't have let you in." "Hagrid lets dangerous things in all the time," Sirius said. "Hagrid lets misunderstood things in," Harry said. "There's a difference." Sirius looked at Hagrid. Hagrid looked at Harry. The exchange between the three of them, the godfather, the foster father, the son, contained the complete history of 13 years. the baby on the doorstep, the cupboard, the hut, the forest, the childhood that had happened in the gaps between the world's plans. "Your godfather, Harry," Hagrid said. "He came to see Yare." "I can see that," Harry said. "Does he want tea?" "Aye," Sirius started. "Dar makes terrible tea," Harry said. "But it's warm, and the rock cakes are, well, they're something." "They're terrible," Hagrid said. "But they're made with love." "With something," Harry said. "Sit at the table, Sirius. I'll put the kettle on." Sirius sat at the table. Harry made tea. The making was practiced. The movements of someone who had been making tea in this kitchen since he was tall enough to reach the stove. The domesticity of it, the ordinariness, the comfort, the son making tea for the guest while the father sat by the fire, was the thing that broke Sirius. He cried. At the table, in the hut, drinking terrible tea and eating worse rock cakes. Sirius Black cried for the first time since Azkaban. "That happens a lot here," Harry said. "Dar cries constantly." "I'm a sensitive man," Hagrid said. "He is," Harry said. "You get used to it. The Umbridge year, Hagrid under siege." Umbridge's arrival in 5th year was the first time Harry's unconventional upbringing became a political problem rather than a personal eccentricity. Umbridge investigated Hagrid. Not his teaching, she investigated his custody of Harry Potter because the information had leaked through Fudge, through the Ministry, through the specific institutional gossip network that connected the Ministry to the school, and because Umbridge saw in the arrangement an opportunity. "The boy who lived," Umbridge said in Dumbledore's office, "has been raised by an unqualified half-breed in a gamekeeper's hut." "Hagrid is not," Dumbledore started. "Rubeus Hagrid is a half-giant," Umbridge said, "expelled from Hogwarts in his 3rd year. No qualifications, no parenting credentials, no legal standing as a guardian." "Hagrid has raised Harry for 14 years, Dumbledore said. "Without Ministry approval," Umbridge said. "Without a guardianship hearing. Without any formal, with my approval," Dumbledore said. "Which is not sufficient," Umbridge said. "The Ministry is the authority on child welfare. Not Hogwarts. Not you." Dumbledore looked at her with the blue eyes that did the thing they did when Dumbledore was being patient about something he was not patient about. "The Ministry," Dumbledore said, "placed Harry with the Dursleys. The Dursleys placed Harry in a cupboard. Hagrid removed Harry from the cupboard. If the Ministry would like to discuss child welfare standards, I suggest they begin with their own placement decisions." "That is irrelevant. It is entirely relevant," Dumbledore said. "The Ministry placed a child in an abusive home. A half-giant rescued that child and raised him for 14 years. The child is healthy, educated, socially adjusted, and magically capable. If the Ministry's concern is Harry's welfare, then Harry's welfare is excellent. The Ministry's concern is political," Dumbledore said. "The Ministry's concern is that the boy who lived was raised by someone the Ministry considers unacceptable, and the Ministry would like to correct that narrative." Umbridge looked at him. The toad face did the thing it did when Umbridge was calculating whether a direct confrontation was worth the cost. "This will be investigated," Umbridge said. "By all means," Dumbledore said. "Investigate. You will find a boy who can identify 30 species of magical creature, who reads at a 7th year level, who has been personally tutored by the headmaster of Hogwarts since age 4, and who calls a half-giant Dar with the genuine affection of a child who has been loved." "That is not the standard. There is no standard for love, Dolores," Dumbledore said. "That is rather the point." Umbridge investigated. She came to the hut. She inspected the premises, the crib, the kitchen, the living space. She wrote notes on her clipboard in the pink ink that she used for everything. She looked at the hut with the expression of someone who was evaluating a dwelling against Ministry standards and finding it wanting. "This is not acceptable housing for a child," Umbridge said. "It's my home," Harry said. He was standing in the doorway. "The Ministry requires certain standards. The Ministry left me in a cupboard," Harry said. "This hut is a castle compared to that cupboard. The previous placement is not under discussion. Then neither is this one," Harry said. "Unless the Ministry wants to explain to the Daily Prophet why they're trying to remove the boy who lived from the only home he's known, on the orders of a woman who uses a blood quill on students." Umbridge froze. "I know about the quill," Harry said. "I have the scars. I have photographs. And I have friends who work at the Prophet." "You are threatening a Ministry official." "I'm stating facts," Harry said. "The facts include a blood quill, photographs, and a public who will be very interested to learn that the Ministry tortured the boy who lived and then tried to take him from his father." The investigation was dropped. Not because Harry's argument was legally sound. It wasn't. Because the political cost of pursuing it was higher than the political benefit, and because Umbridge, who was a political creature above all else, recognized when a battle was unwinnable. "Yeah, shouldn't have threatened her," Hagrid said. "After." "I didn't threaten her," Harry said. "I informed her." "Yeah, sounded like Dumbledore," Hagrid said. "I sounded like someone who's been tutored by Dumbledore since age 4, Harry said. "That's scarier," Hagrid said. "Good," Harry said. "Year 6, Dumbledore's Death Dumbledore died in Harry's 6th year. The death, the tower, the curse, the fall happened the way it happened, with the additions and subtractions that this timeline produced. Snape's role, Draco's mission, the Elder One's allegiance. Harry was at the base of the tower when Dumbledore fell. He saw the body land. He saw the man who had taught him to read, who had sat in Hagrid's hut twice a week for 6 years with flashcards and puzzles and the patient, eccentric pedagogy of the greatest wizard of the century reduced to a primary school tutor because a baby needed to learn his letters. Harry didn't scream. He didn't collapse. He went to the body and he knelt beside it, and he said, "Thank you, Professor, for the reading." It was the wrong thing to say. It was also the right thing to say. Because the reading, the Tuesdays and Thursdays, the cards and the games, the hours that Dumbledore had spent in the hut teaching a child whose education was his responsibility because his doorstep placement had failed. The reading was the foundation. Everything else, the strategy, the Horcruxes, the war, was built on the reading. Hagrid found Harry at the base of the tower. "Harry," Hagrid said. "Harry, come away." "He taught me to read," Harry said. "I know," Hagrid said. "He sat in the hut and he held up cards and he taught me to read because I needed to learn and because you couldn't teach me." "I know," Hagrid said. "Come away, Harry. He made up for it," Harry said. "For the doorstep. He made up for it with the reading." Hagrid picked Harry up. At 16, Harry was too big for this. Too big to be carried by anyone except Hagrid, who was the one person in the world large enough to carry a 16-year-old like a child. He carried Harry to the hut. He put him in the crib. He sat in the chair. "'S all right, Harry," Hagrid said. "'S all right. I've got yeah." The same words. Always the same words. Because the words were the words and the words worked, and Hagrid had never needed more than one incantation. Hagrid at the battle during the Battle of Hogwarts, Hagrid fought. Not with a wand, with everything else. With his size, his strength, the broken umbrella magic that was unreliable but devastating when it connected. With the creatures, the thestrals, the hippogriffs, the acromantulas who had been persuaded, Harry had persuaded them. Speaking to Aragog's children with the authority of someone who had been visiting the colony since age 4, to fight for the school rather than for Voldemort. Hagrid fought in the forest. His forest, the forbidden forest that he'd tended for 40 years, that he knew tree by tree and creature by creature, that was, in every meaningful sense, his domain. The Death Eaters who entered the forest found it hostile. The trees moved, not through enchantment, but through the Hagrid-cultivated relationship between the groundskeeper and the ancient woodland. The Centaurs joined the fight, not because they supported Dumbledore's army, but because they supported the forest's keeper, who had respected their sovereignty for 4 decades. Hagrid asked, Firenze said, to the Centaur formation. We have never refused Hagrid. The creatures fought. The Thestrals dove from above. The hippogriffs struck from the flanks. Buckbeak, returned from hiding, older but no less fierce, led the aerial assault with the specific vindictive enthusiasm of a hippogriff who had been sentenced to death by a wizard and who was now fighting against that wizard's allies. Hagrid was captured in the forest. The capture happened because Hagrid had gone too deep, had pursued a group of Death Eaters into the old growth section where the trees were too thick for the Thestrals and where even Hagrid's size was a liability in the close quarters. They bound him. The binding was difficult, standard chains didn't hold a half-giant, and the magical restraints required 3 wizards working together. They brought him to the clearing where Voldemort was waiting. Voldemort used Hagrid as a trophy. Behold, Voldemort announced to his Death Eaters, the half-breed who raised the boy. Hagrid said nothing. Hagrid, who talked constantly, who couldn't keep a secret, who told everyone everything whether they wanted to hear it or not, Hagrid said nothing. Because the situation didn't require words. The situation required the one thing Hagrid had always been best at. Being present. Being there. Occupying the space with the enormous, immovable quality of a man who was not going to be moved by anything except the outcome he was waiting for. He was waiting for Harry. Harry came. The return when Harry rose from Hagrid's arms in front of the castle, when the killing curse failed, and Harry stood up and the war turned, Hagrid's response was not the shouting or the cheering that filled the grounds. Hagrid fell to his knees. The kneeling was not voluntary. The knees gave out. The enormous, half-giant knees that had carried Hagrid through 40 years of groundskeeping and 16 years of parenting, and Hagrid was on the ground and the tears were coming, and the tears were the tears of a man who had just carried his son's body out of the forest and who had just watched his son come back to life. Harry, Hagrid said, from the ground, looking up at the boy who was standing. Harry, I'm here, Dar, Harry said. I'm here. The battle continued around them. Harry went to fight Voldemort. Hagrid stayed on the ground for another 30 seconds. 30 seconds of the purest, most overwhelming emotion that a human body could produce. And then he got up. He got up because there was a battle, and because his son was fighting, and because Hagrid was, underneath everything, a person who got up. He fought. With his fists, with the umbrella, with the sheer physical reality of being the largest person on the battlefield. He threw Death Eaters. Literally threw them. Picked them up and threw them, which was a combat technique that no Defense Against the Dark Arts textbook had ever documented, and which was, in practice, devastatingly effective. The battle ended. Voldemort died. The sun came up. Hagrid found Harry in the Great Hall. Harry was sitting on the floor, not at a table, on the floor. Because the floor was where you sat when you were too exhausted for furniture. Hagrid sat on the floor next to him. The floor groaned. Hagrid sitting down was a seismic event. The displacement of someone who took up as much space as 3 normal people and who was, at this moment, committed to taking up exactly as much space as his son needed him to. Sober, Hagrid said. Yeah, Harry said. Yeah, died, Hagrid said. I came back, Harry said. Don't do it again, Hagrid said. I'll try, Harry said. Try harder, Hagrid said. Harry leaned against Hagrid. The leaning was the leaning of a child, not a 17-year-old war hero, but a child, leaning against the parent who had always been there. Hagrid put his arm around Harry, the arm that was the size of Harry's entire torso, and held him. It's all right, Harry, Hagrid said. "It's all right. I've got yeah." "I know, Da," Harry said. "I know." They sat on the floor of the great hall while the sun came up and the world began the long process of rebuilding. The floor was hard and the hall was cold, and neither of them moved. Home was not a building. Home was not a hut or a crib or a fire. Home was the person next to you. Home was the arm around your shoulder. Home was the voice that said the same thing. Every time, without variation, without improvement, without the need for eloquence, all right. "I've got yeah." That was enough. That had always been enough. He was a half-giant with a broken wand who lived in a hut and who couldn't do proper magic and who cried at everything and who kept illegal creatures in his garden and who made rock cakes that could chip teeth. He was also the person who went back. 3 days after, when nobody else checked, Hagrid went back. And he found a baby in a cupboard, and he did the only thing that made sense to a man whose heart was bigger than his judgment. He took the baby home. He raised Harry Potter in a hut on the edge of a forest with a dog and a fire and the limitless, impractical, completely insufficient love of someone who didn't know how to do anything except care. It wasn't enough. By any reasonable measure, by any standard of education, socialization, preparation for the world, it wasn't enough. It was everything. It was all the magic anyone ever needed. He checked, he found, he took, he raised, he loved. That was the whole story. That was enough. Additional threads, the Dumbledore lessons, what Harry actually learned. The tutoring sessions, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 o'clock, in the hut, were the intellectual foundation of Harry's life, and they were nothing like school. Dumbledore did not teach the way teachers taught. He did not stand at the front of a room and deliver information. He sat in a chair in Hagrid's hut with a cup of terrible tea and a rock cake he never ate, and he asked questions. "What did you see in the forest today?" Dumbledore said, on a Tuesday when Harry was 6. "A bowtruckle," Harry said, "on the birch tree near the lake." "And what was the bowtruckle doing?" Dumbledore said. "Eating woodlice," Harry said. "Why woodlice?" Dumbledore said. "Because bowtruckles eat woodlice," Harry said. "But why woodlice specifically?" Dumbledore said. "Why not other insects? Why not beetles, or ants, or flies?" Harry thought about this. "Because woodlice live in bark, and bowtruckles live in trees, so the food is where the bowtruckle already is." "Exactly," Dumbledore said. "The bowtruckle doesn't hunt. The bowtruckle lives where its food is." Which tells us something about the relationship between a creature and its environment. That the environment shapes what the creature eats, Harry said. That the environment shapes what the creature becomes, Dumbledore said. A bowtruckle raised away from trees would still want woodlice, but it wouldn't know how to find them. The instinct is inherited. The skill is environmental. "Like me," Harry said. Dumbledore looked at him, 6 years old, and making the connection between a bowtruckle's relationship with bark and his own relationship with the hut. "Like you," Dumbledore said. "My instincts are from my parents," Harry said. "My skills are from Dar." "That is a remarkably accurate assessment," Dumbledore said. "Dar says I'm smart," Harry said. "Dar is correct," Dumbledore said. The lessons covered everything: reading, writing, arithmetic, the basics that any child needed, but also magical theory, taught through analogy rather than textbook, history, taught through stories rather than dates, ethics, taught through dilemmas rather than rules. "A thestral has been injured in the forest," Dumbledore said when Harry was 8. "It can be healed, but the healing requires a potion that uses unicorn blood as an ingredient. Unicorn blood is obtained by harming a unicorn. Do you heal the Thestral? Can I find another ingredient? Harry said. There is no other ingredient, Dumbledore said. Can I ask the unicorn to donate the blood voluntarily? Harry said. Unicorns do not donate blood, Dumbledore said. The blood must be taken. Then I don't heal the Thestral, Harry said, because harming one creature to save another means I'm choosing which creature matters more, and I don't have the right to make that choice. Even if the Thestral will die without treatment, Dumbledore said. Even then, Harry said, because if I harm the unicorn, I'm saying the Thestral's life is worth more than the unicorn's pain. And I don't know that. I can't know that. Dumbledore looked at him. Your father would have healed the Thestral, Dumbledore said, without hesitation. James was a person of action. What would my mum have done? Harry said. Your mother, Dumbledore said, would have spent 3 weeks inventing a new potion that didn't require unicorn blood. That sounds better, Harry said. It does, Dumbledore said. It is also considerably more difficult. Dad says the difficult thing is usually the right thing, Harry said. Hagrid is wiser than most people realise, Dumbledore said. Dad says he's not wise, Harry said. He says he's just stubborn. Wisdom and stubbornness, Dumbledore said, are frequently the same thing wearing different robes. Hagrid's fears Hagrid was afraid constantly. This was the thing that nobody saw. The fear that lived underneath the warmth, the enthusiasm, the enormous exterior of a man who seemed incapable of worry. He was afraid that Harry would be taken away. Every owl from the Ministry, every visitor to the school, every conversation that touched on Harry's living situation produced a spike of anxiety that Hagrid managed through the only technique he knew, carrying on. He was afraid that he was doing it wrong, that Harry's education was inadequate, that the social isolation was damaging, that the hut was too small and too rough and too far from other children, that Harry deserved better than rock cakes and thestrals and a broken-wanded half-giant who cried at everything. Am I doing this right? Hagrid asked Dumbledore one evening. Harry was 8, asleep in the crib. The conversation was the conversation of 2 adults over the sleeping child. Doing what right? Dumbledore said. Raising him, Hagrid said. All of it. The feeding and the teaching and the everything. There is no right in parenting, Dumbledore said. There is love, and there is effort, and there is the willingness to continue when both of those feel insufficient. They feel insufficient every day, Hagrid said. Then you are doing it correctly, Dumbledore said. The parents who feel adequate are the ones I worry about. Yeah, worry about parents? Hagrid said. I worry about everyone, Dumbledore said. But parents most of all. Because the stakes of parenting are permanent, the things you do for a child become the things the child carries forever. What am I giving him? Hagrid said. Really, what is Harry getting from me that he wouldn't get from a proper family? Dumbledore was quiet for a moment. The quiet was the Dumbledore quiet. The pause that meant something significant was being assembled behind the silence. You are giving him the understanding that love does not require qualification, Dumbledore said. That a person does not need to be smart or powerful or important to love a child completely. That the capacity for love is independent of every other capacity. That is the rarest gift a parent can give, Dumbledore said. Most children learn that love is conditional, on performance, on obedience, on meeting expectations. Harry is learning that love simply is, that it exists without conditions, that it will be there tomorrow regardless of what happens today. I can't help crying at things, Hagrid said. He sees me cry every other day. He sees you feel things, Dumbledore said. He sees a man who is not ashamed of his emotions, who weeps at beauty and at sadness and at the overwhelming experience of being alive. That is not a weakness, Hagrid. That is a curriculum. A curriculum, Hagrid said. The curriculum of the heart, Dumbledore said, which is the only one that matters in the end. Hagrid wiped his eyes. because the conversation was about crying and because discussing the subject produced the effect which was the Hagrid way. "Thank ye, Professor," Hagrid said. "Thank you, Hagrid," Dumbledore said, "for giving a child what I could not." What Ron understood Ron Weasley understood Harry's relationship with Hagrid faster than anyone else. Because Ron understood family. Ron had grown up in a family that was large, chaotic, warm, and completely unlike the neat, institutional, proper families that the wizarding world considered standard. The Burrow was a house held together by magic and stubbornness. The Weasley parents were overwhelmed and underfunded and completely committed. Harry's family was a hut held together by oak beams and love. Harry's parent was one man with a broken wand and a heart the size of a continent. "It's the same," Ron said, in second year. "Your family and mine. Your family has 7 children." Harry said. "Mine has 1 man and a dog." "That's not what I mean," Ron said. "I mean the quality of it. The way it feels. In your hut, the feeling is the same as in the Burrow." "What feeling?" Harry said. "The feeling of being wanted," Ron said. "Of walking through the door and the person inside is happy to see you. Not because you're useful or famous or important. Because you're there." Harry looked at Ron, at this boy who was insecure about almost everything. About his marks, about his poverty, about his position as the 6th son in a family of achievers, and who was, on this particular subject, the most perceptive person Harry had met. "Yeah," Harry said. "That's exactly right. Hagrid lights up when you come home," Ron said. "The way Mum lights up when any of us walks through the kitchen door. It's the light up." "The light up," Harry said. "That's what family is," Ron said. "The light up when you walk in. Everything else, the house, the money, the blood status, everything else is just details." "Ron," Harry said, That's really insightful. Don't tell Hermione," Ron said. "She'll want to analyse it." "She absolutely will," Harry said. "She'll write an essay," Ron said. The Light Up, a theoretical framework for understanding familial attachment. 12 pages. Double referenced. 14 pages, Harry said. "She always goes over. She does," Ron said. "It's awful, and I love her for it." "I know you do," Harry said. "Shut up," Ron said. "You literally just..." "Shut up," Ron said. But he was grinning. The Weasley grin, the one that said, "I am uncomfortable with this emotion and I am going to express the discomfort through humour because that is how Weasleys operate." Hermione and the research Hermione Granger, upon learning in first year that Harry had been raised by Hagrid, did 3 things in rapid succession. First, she went to the library and read everything available on half-giant child rearing practices, which was nothing, because nobody had written about it. Second, she went to the library and read everything available on alternative family structures in the wizarding world, which was considerably more, but which did not include the specific configuration of half-giant groundskeeper raises orphan in a hut. Third, she went to Harry and asked him questions for 2 hours. "What did you eat?" she said. "Stew, rock cakes, vegetables from the garden, milk from Hogsmeade. What was your sleep schedule? Bed when it got dark, up when it got light, nap in the afternoon when I was small. Socialization? Other children? None until school. Educational materials? Dumbledore's tutoring. Hagrid's creature lessons. The forest. The forest is not an educational material," Hermione said. "The forest is the best educational material," Harry said. "Everything I know about patience, observation, respect, risk assessment, and interspecies communication I learned in the forest." "Interspecies communication," Hermione said. "Talking to centaurs," Harry said. "Approaching hippogriffs. Understanding thestral body language." "Harry," Hermione said, "you are the most unusually educated person I have ever met." "Is that a compliment?" Harry said. "It's an observation," she said. "You can identify 30 species of magical creature, but you didn't know what sarcasm was until last week." Hagrid doesn't do sarcasm, Harry said. Hagrid says what he means. Which is wonderful, she said, and also means you're at a significant disadvantage in any social situation that requires the ability to detect when someone is being insincere. I'll learn, Harry said. I'll help, she said. She helped. For 7 years, Hermione Granger provided the social translation that Hagrid's education hadn't included, the decoding of tone, the identification of subtext, the understanding that human communication was approximately 40% words and 60% everything else. She's being sarcastic, Hermione would whisper, at dinner. Are you sure? Harry would say. The eyebrow, Hermione would say. The left eyebrow goes up. That's sarcasm. In my experience, Harry would say, the left eyebrow going up means the creature is about to charge. This is not the forest, Hermione would say. This is the Great Hall. Same principles, Harry would say. Completely different principles, Hermione would say. But the eyebrow, Harry would say. The eyebrow is not the same, Hermione would say. Ron, observing these exchanges, would eat his dinner and say nothing, because the Harry-Hermione dynamic was the dynamic of two people who were never going to agree about eyebrows and who were going to be friends forever regardless. What Hagrid built in the end, the story was simple, not easy. Nothing about raising a child alone in a hut at the edge of a forest was easy, but simple in how important things were always simple when you stripped away the complications. A man found a baby in a cupboard. He took the baby home. He raised the baby with everything he had, which was not much, and was also everything. The baby grew into a boy who could talk to creatures and face dragons and walk into a forest to die and come back. The boy grew into a man who went home every Saturday to a hut where the tea was too strong and the rock cakes were impossible, and the person inside was happy to see him. The light up. That was what Ron had called it. The light up when someone walked through the door. Hagrid's light up never dimmed. At 70, when Harry was 30 and had children of his own, when the world had changed and the war was history and the hut had been rebuilt twice and the crib was still in the corner, Hagrid's face still did the thing it had done since Harry was 15 months old. It broke into the enormous, tearful, complete smile of a man who was happy because the person he loved most was in the room. "Da," Harry said, walking through the door on a Saturday. "Harry," Hagrid said. Come in, kettle's on. I've made rock cakes." "Of course you have," Harry said. "They're good this time," Hagrid said. "They're never good," Harry said. "They're made with love," Hagrid said. "They're made with concrete," Harry said. "Same ingredient," Hagrid said. Harry laughed. The laugh was the laugh of someone who had been hearing this joke for 29 years and who would be happy to hear it for 29 more. He sat in the hut. He drank the tea. He ate a rock cake, which was terrible, which had always been terrible, which would always be terrible, and which was, in the context of what it represented, a man making food for the person he loved. Badly, consistently, forever. The best food Harry had ever tasted. The hut was warm. The fire was lit. Fang the Third was by the door. The forest was outside, dark and deep and full of creatures that Hagrid knew by name and that Harry had known since before he could walk. He was home. He had always been home. The man who found a baby in a cupboard had made sure of that. Rubeus Hagrid was not qualified to raise a child. He was expelled from school at 13. His wand was broken. He lived in a hut. He couldn't cook. He cried at everything. He kept dragons and acromantulas and blast-ended scroots in his garden. He was half-giant in a world that treated half-giants as less than human. He was also the person who checked. 3 days after Dumbledore left a baby on a doorstep, Hagrid went back. Not because anyone told him to, not because it was his job. because he cared, and because caring meant checking, and because checking was the thing that Hagrid did for every creature he'd ever loved. He found Harry in a cupboard. He picked Harry up. He carried Harry home. He never stopped. Every rock cake, every nightmare, every Tuesday evening of Dumbledore's tutoring, every morning in the forest, every "Saul right, I've got yeah" whispered in the dark to a child whose nightmares were the echoes of a murder. That was the magic. Not wands, not spells, not blood protection or ancient enchantments or the strategic brilliance of the most powerful wizard of the century. Love. The simple, stubborn, inelegant, rock cake flavoured love of a man who was not qualified for the most important job in the world and who did it anyway. He checked. He found. He carried. He stayed. That was everything. More threads the nightmares. What Hagrid did at 3 in the morning the nightmares were the hardest part of the early years. Harry had them from the beginning, from the first night in the hut, when the scar pulsed red and the baby screamed with a sound that was not the sound of a baby waking up, but the sound of a baby reliving something that no baby should have to relive. Hagrid learned the pattern. The scar would flush, pale pink first, then red, then angry scarlet. The breathing would change, rapid, shallow, the breathing of someone in distress. Then the screaming. The screaming was the worst part, because the screaming had a quality to it that was not infant distress but something older, something that belonged to a different kind of terror. In the first month, Hagrid panicked. He picked Harry up and held him and walked around the hut and talked and sang, badly, tunelessly, the singing of a man who had never been taught to sing but who was willing to try because the baby was screaming. "It's all right," Hagrid would say. "It's all right, Harry, I've got yeah. Whatever yeah seeing, it's not real. Not anymore. It's all right." The words became a ritual, night after night, for years. 3 in the morning, the scar flaring, the screaming starting, and Hagrid in the chair with Harry in his arms saying the same words. By the time Harry was 3, the nightmares had a rhythm. They came in cycles, 3 or 4 nights of peaceful sleep, then a night of screaming. Hagrid tracked the cycles how he tracked migration patterns in the forest, with patience and observation, looking for the variables that predicted the bad nights. He found one. The nightmares were worse near Halloween, the anniversary of the attack. The scar's memory of that night amplified by the temporal proximity, the way old wounds ached in the weather that matched the weather of the wounding. "October's a bad month," Hagrid told Dumbledore during one of the early tutoring sessions. Harry was 5, asleep in the crib, peaceful. It was a good night, a November night, the worst of October behind them. "The anniversary," Dumbledore said. "The scar knows," Hagrid said. "Even if Harry doesn't remember, the scar remembers." "The scar contains..." Dumbledore stopped. He was not yet ready to explain Horcruxes to Hagrid, not yet ready to articulate what the scar actually held. The scar contains a connection to the event. The connection is active, especially near the anniversary. "Can ye stop it?" Hagrid said. "I cannot stop it," Dumbledore said. "What I can do is monitor it, ensure that the connection does not grow stronger." "It's not growing stronger," Hagrid said. "The nightmares are. They're the same. They don't get worse. They just don't stop." "That may be the best we can hope for," Dumbledore said. "That's not good enough," Hagrid said. "No," Dumbledore said. "It isn't." Hagrid developed techniques, not magical, practical, the techniques of a man who knew creatures and who understood that distressed creatures needed physical comfort, consistent environment, and the presence of something larger and calmer than themselves. He held Harry against his chest. The heartbeat, Hagrid's heartbeat, which was slower and deeper than a normal person's, the heartbeat of a half-giant, had a calming effect. The rhythm was too slow for a lullaby, but right for a breathing exercise. In with Hagrid's heartbeat, out between beats. He kept the fire low during nightmare nights, Not out. The warmth was important, but low, because bright light during the screaming made it worse. The dimness was forest dim, the light level that the forbidden forest maintained on moonlit nights, and Harry had been in the forest often enough that the light level registered as safe. He talked, not in the bright, cheerful voice he used during the day, in a lower register, the ground-level rumble of someone whose vocal cords were half-giant-sized and who could produce a vibration that Harry felt through his chest rather than heard through his ears. It's all right. I've got yeah. The forest is quiet. The fire is warm. Fang is right here. It's all right, Harry. It's all right. By the time Harry was 5, the technique was so refined that the nightmares lasted minutes instead of hours. By 8, Harry sometimes didn't fully wake, would stir, would whimper, and Hagrid's hand on his chest and Hagrid's voice in the dark would pull him back to sleep without the full screaming cycle. "You're good at this," Dumbledore said, watching from the doorway one Tuesday evening when a nightmare had interrupted the tutoring session. "I'm not good at anything," Hagrid said. "I just don't stop trying." "That," Dumbledore said, "is a definition of good." The creatures, Harry's other education by the time Harry was 10, he had a relationship with the Forbidden Forest that no human, wizard or muggle, had ever had. This was Hagrid's gift. Not the creature knowledge, though that was part of it. The relationship. The understanding that the forest was not an obstacle or a resource or a danger zone. The forest was a community. A community of creatures who lived and ate and fought and reproduced and died according to patterns that were as complex and as worthy of respect as any human society. Harry knew the Thestral herd. He'd been watching them since he could walk, the skeletal, leather-winged horses that most people couldn't see. Harry could see them because Harry had witnessed death, and the seeing had never frightened him because Hagrid had introduced them as what they were, beautiful, loyal creatures that had been unfairly stigmatized because of their association with death. "People are afraid of them," Hagrid said when Harry was 4, watching the herd graze in a clearing, "because they can only be seen by people who've seen death. So people think seeing them means something bad." "What does it mean?" Harry said. "It means ye've experienced something difficult," Hagrid said. "And ye came through it. Seeing Thestrals doesn't mean ye cursed. It means ye survived." Harry reached out and touched the nearest Thestral. The creature turned its head, the bony, reptilian head, and regarded him with the milky eyes that saw everything, including the things that the living preferred to ignore. "She likes ye," Hagrid said. "How can you tell?" Harry said. "She's not moving away," Hagrid said. "Thestrals don't stay near people they don't trust." Harry named the Thestral. He called her Nightwing, which was the kind of name a 4-year-old gave to a skeletal horse and which Hagrid never corrected, because the naming was important. The naming was the beginning of the relationship, and the relationship was the beginning of understanding. By 10, Harry could call the Thestrals by name, and they would come, not through magic, through the Hagrid taught, non-magical communication that came from years of proximity and respect. The Thestrals knew Harry the way the forest knew Hagrid, as someone who belonged. He knew the centaurs. This was the more difficult relationship. Centaurs were proud, insular, and deeply suspicious of humans who entered their territory. But Hagrid had spent decades building the relationship, and Harry had inherited the access. Firenze was the first centaur Harry met. He was 5. Hagrid had taken him to the centaur clearing, the space at the edge of their territory where meetings happened, and Firenze had come. "This is the foal," Firenze said, looking at Harry. Centaurs called human children foals, which was their concession to interspecies politeness. "This is Harry," Hagrid said. "He's mine. He is not yours," Firenze said. "He belongs to the stars. He belongs to the hut," Hagrid said. "The stars can have him when he's older." "The stars do not wait," Firenze said. "But the foal is welcome in the forest. Hagrid's foal is the forest's foal." This designation, the forest's foal, gave Harry a status among the centaurs that no other human had ever held. He was not a visitor. He was not an intruder. He was a creature of the forest, raised by the forest's keeper, accepted into the community through the keeper's standing. By 10, Harry could walk into centaur territory alone. Not far. The deep territory was still restricted, because the centaurs had boundaries and Harry respected them, but far enough to sit with Firenze and learn about the stars, which was the centaurs' way of talking about everything. The past, the future, the patterns of the world. Mars is bright tonight, Firenze said on one of these visits. Harry was 9. What does that mean? Harry said. It means conflict is coming, Firenze said. The stars do not specify what kind, but the brightness of Mars indicates that the conflict will be significant. How significant? Harry said. The kind that changes everything, Firenze said. The kind that determines what comes next. Can you tell me more? Harry said. I can tell you that the foal at the centre of the conflict has already been marked, Firenze said. He looked at Harry's scar. The stars have been watching you, Harry Potter, since the night you arrived in the forest. What do they say? Harry said. They say you are loved, Firenze said, and that the loved are the most dangerous creatures in any conflict, because the loved have something to fight for. Harry carried this back to the hut. He told Hagrid, The centaurs say I'm loved, Harry said, and that loved creatures are dangerous. You're not dangerous, Hagrid said. Firenze says I will be, Harry said. Firenze says a lot of things, Hagrid said. Most of them are about Mars. Mars is bright, Harry said. Mars is always bright, Hagrid said. It's a planet. That's what planets do. You're dismissing centaur wisdom, Harry said. I'm making dinner, Hagrid said, which is more important than Mars. Da? Harry said. Yeah? Hagrid said. Am I dangerous? Harry said. Hagrid looked at his son, at the 9-year-old boy who had grown up in a forest with centaurs and thestrals and a half-giant father, and who was asking, with the serious, thoughtful curiosity of a child who took the world seriously, whether he was dangerous. Yeah, kind, Hagrid said. And the kind ones are always the most dangerous, because they fight hardest when the things they love are threatened. Is that what you are? Harry said. Kind and dangerous? I'm a man with a frying pan, Hagrid said. Dinner in 10 minutes. That's not an answer, Harry said. It's the only one you're getting, Hagrid said. Wash your hands. Harry washed his hands. The question sat between them. The question about kindness and danger, which was the question about Hagrid himself. About the man who had walked into a house and taken a baby from a cupboard, because the taking was the kind thing, and because the kind thing was, in its own way, the most dangerous thing Hagrid had ever done. The Horcrux hunt, what Hagrid did while Harry was gone when Harry left for the Horcrux hunt in September of what should have been 7th year. Hagrid stayed at Hogwarts. This was not by choice. Hagrid wanted to go, wanted to be with Harry, wanted to protect him, wanted to do the thing he'd been doing for 16 years. Keep Harry safe. But the hunt required mobility, secrecy, and the ability to move through the wizarding world without drawing attention, and Hagrid was 8 feet tall and drew attention in every room he entered. I can't take Harry said. You know I can't. I know, Hagrid said. It's not about. I know what it's about, Hagrid said. Yeah, need to be fast and quiet. I'm neither. You're everything else, Harry said. Yeah, Hagrid said, but fast and quiet is what the mission needs. They stood in the hut, the last morning. September, Harry had his rucksack, the small, charmed rucksack that Hermione had packed with the terrifying efficiency that characterized all of Hermione's preparations. I'll be back, Harry said. Yeah, said that before, Hagrid said. And I came back before, Harry said. Promise me, Hagrid said. I promise, Harry said. You're lying, Hagrid said. I'm not lying, Harry said. I'm promising something I can't guarantee. Those are different. They feel the same, Hagrid said. Harry hugged him. The hug was the hug of a child hugging a parent, which was what it was, regardless of the fact that the child was 17 and the parent was a half-giant, and the hug was happening in a hut at the edge of a forest on the morning of a departure that might be permanent. All right, Hagrid said. I've got yeah. I know, Harry said. That's why I can go. What? Hagrid said. The reason I can leave, Harry said. The reason I can walk into whatever's coming. It's because I know you're here. The hut's here. The fire, the rock cakes, the terrible tea. It's here. And knowing it's here is the thing that lets me go. Hagrid couldn't respond. The emotion was too large for words, too large for the hut, too large for the morning, too large for the space between a parent and a child who was leaving for a war. Harry left. Hagrid stood in the doorway and watched him walk across the grounds toward the gate where Ron and Hermione were waiting. He went inside. He sat in the chair by the fire. Fang put his head on Hagrid's knee. He'll be back, Hagrid said to Fang. Fang whined. He'll be back, Hagrid said again. To the hut, to the fire. To the crib in the corner that Harry hadn't slept in for a year, but that Hagrid hadn't moved and wasn't going to move, because the crib was the crib, and the crib would be there when Harry came home. During the months of the hunt, Hagrid maintained the hut. This was not a metaphor, it was literal. He kept the fire lit. He kept the crib made. He kept tea ready, on the off chance that Harry would walk through the door and need a cup. He kept the rock cakes fresh. Well, as fresh as rock cakes ever got, which was a standard that existed outside normal freshness measurements, and that Hagrid maintained through the specific, stubborn optimism of a man who believed that his son was coming home and that his son would want a rock cake when he did. He kept the forest in order. The creatures, the thestrals, the centaurs, the bowtruckles and nifflers and every other species that depended on the groundskeeper's care were tended with the same attention that Hagrid had always given them. The attention was, if anything, more focused during the hunt, because caring for the creatures was the thing Hagrid could do, and doing what you could was Hagrid's answer to helplessness. Mars is still bright, Firenze told Hagrid in November. Is Harry in the stars? Hagrid said. Harry is in all the stars, Firenze said. His path is visible. It continues. It continues, Hagrid said. It continues, Firenze confirmed. This was enough. The centaur's confirmation that Harry's path was visible, that the stars could still see him, that the trajectory was ongoing, was enough for Hagrid to go home and make tea and maintain the hut and wait. He waited for 8 months. 8 months of maintaining and tending and waiting and believing, with the specific, enormous, rock-cake, solid faith of a man who had decided 16 years ago that this child was his, and who was not going to stop believing until belief was no longer possible. Harry came home. He walked through the door of the hut on a May morning, after the battle, after the forest, after the dying and the coming back. He walked through the door, and Hagrid was there, and the fire was lit, and the tea was ready, and the rock cakes were, well, they were rock cakes. Da, Harry said. Harry, Hagrid said. The light up. The thing Ron had identified. The face doing the thing it had done for 16 years. The enormous, tearful, complete joy of someone who was happy because the person they loved most was in the room. You're home, Hagrid said. I'm home, Harry said. Tea? Hagrid said. Please, Harry said. Hagrid made tea. Harry sat in his chair, not the crib, the chair, because 17-year-olds sat in chairs. And he drank the tea, and he ate a rock cake, and the rock cake was terrible, and the tea was too strong, and the hut was warm, and Fang was drooling on his shoes, and everything was exactly the way it was supposed to be. "It's all right, Harry," Hagrid said. "It's all right." "I've got I know, Dar," Harry said. "I've always known." He checked. That's the whole story. The whole magic. The whole point. He went back and he checked. And everything that followed, the hut, the crib, the rock cakes, the forest, the creatures, the reading lessons, the nightmares, the battle, the forest walk, the dying and the coming back, the Saturdays, the tea, the light up, the 29 years of a man standing in a doorway, being happy because his son had walked through it, all of it started because one man went back and checked. Because that's what you do when you love something. You check. And Hagrid checked. And Harry was home. Final threads, the first day of school, Hagrid's perspective on September 1st. When Harry walked into the Great Hall as a student for the first time, Hagrid sat at the staff table and watched. He'd been watching Harry for 10 years, from the chair in the hut, from the forest paths, from the garden, while Harry chased Fang through the pumpkins. Watching was what Hagrid did, the steady, patient, attentive watching of someone whose primary skill was noticing creatures and whose primary subject of noticing for the last decade had been a boy with a scar. The watching from the staff table was different. It was public watching. For the first time, Hagrid was watching Harry in a room full of other people, and the room full of other people was watching Harry too, and the watching was the watching of several hundred strangers who knew Harry's name but not his face. "That's Harry Potter," the whispers went. "The boy who lived." Hagrid heard the whispers. He heard Harry Potter from 50 different mouths, and the hearing was strange because for 10 years the boy had just been Harry. Not the boy who lived. Not Potter. Harry. His Harry. The boy in the crib, the child on his shoulders, the student who was walking. Right now, this moment toward the stool where the hat was going to sort him. The hat went on. The hat said Gryffindor. Hagrid's tears started before the word was finished. "Are you all right, Hagrid?" Professor Sprout said, sitting next to him. "Fine," Hagrid said. "Just fine. You're crying," Sprout said. "Allergies," Hagrid said. "In September," Sprout said. "Autumn allergies," Hagrid said. Sprout looked at him with the expression of a colleague who had worked with Hagrid for 20 years and who had never once seen him claim allergies for his crying. "He's your boy," Sprout said. Quietly, the kind of quietly that meant I know without requiring confirmation. "Yeah," Hagrid said. "He's my boy. He looks like James," Sprout said. "He acts like Lily," Hagrid said. "Which parts?" Sprout said. "The best parts," Hagrid said. Harry looked up from the Gryffindor table. Across the Great Hall, across the distance between the students and the staff, across the entire institutional structure of a school that was going to be Harry's world for the next 7 years, Harry looked at Hagrid. And grinned. The James grin. The one that said, "I'm here, I'm fine, stop crying." Hagrid grinned back. The Hagrid grin. The one that said, "I'm so proud of Yay, I'm going to cry for the rest of the evening and there's nothing Yay can do about it." The feast began. Hagrid ate. The eating was mechanical. Hagrid's attention was not on the food but on the Gryffindor table, on the boy at the Gryffindor table. On the boy who was sitting next to a red-haired Weasley and talking to a bushy-haired girl, and who was, for the first time in his life, surrounded by children his own age. The socialization. The thing Dumbledore had worried about. The thing Hagrid had known was missing and hadn't been able to provide. Harry was laughing. At something the Weasley boy had said. The laugh was the laugh. Open. Genuine. The laugh of someone who had been raised to feel things fully rather than to manage them. He was going to be all right. Hagrid ate his dinner and cried into his beard, and was, for the first time in 10 years, not worried. What Harry told his children years later, many years, enough years that the war was history rather than memory for most people, Harry sat in the garden at the hut with his children and told them the story. James was 7. Lily was 5. They were playing in the pumpkin patch. The same pumpkin patch that Harry had played in. The same garden, the same hut. Hagrid was inside, making rock cakes, because Hagrid was always making rock cakes. "Tell us about Grandpa," James said. "Which part?" Harry said. "The beginning," Lily said. "The cupboard part." Harry looked at his children, at these two small people who had grown up knowing the story how other children knew fairy tales, as something that had happened once that was important, that defined how they got here. "When I was a baby," Harry said, "someone left me at a house where I wasn't wanted. The people in the house put me in a cupboard under the stairs." "That's mean," Lily said. "It was mean," Harry said. "But 3 days later, someone came and got me." "Grandpa," James said. "Grandpa," Harry said. "He came back to check on me." Because that's what Grandpa does. He checks on things. On creatures, on people, on babies. He checks because he cares. "And he found you in the cupboard," James said. "And he brought me here," Harry said. "To the hut. He built me a crib, that crib, the one in the corner, and he fed me and took care of me and taught me about the forest and the creatures and everything I know about being kind to things." "Grandpa's the kindest person in the world," Lily said. "Yes," Harry said. "He is. Is that why he cries all the time?" James said. "He cries because he feels things," Harry said. "Big things, happy things and sad things and proud things and scared things. He feels them bigger than most people because he's bigger than most people, and the feelings match the size." "I want to be big," Lily said. "You don't have to be big to feel big," Harry said. "You just have to care about things. The way Grandpa does. The way your grandmother Lily did. The way your grandfather James did. The ones who died," James said. The boy's voice was matter of fact, not callous, but the matter of factness of a child who had been told about death honestly, and who had processed it the way children process things when they were given the truth rather than a performance. "The ones who died," Harry said. "They loved me very much. And because they loved me, and because Grandpa loved me, I'm here. And because I'm here, you're here. So we're here because of the cupboard," James said. "We're here because Grandpa checked," Harry said. "Everything else, the forest, the school, the war, everything, it all started because one man went back and checked on a baby." "That's a good story," Lily said. "It's the best story," Harry said. Hagrid came out of the hut with a tray of rock cakes. The rock cakes were what they always were. Monuments to enthusiasm, obstacles to dentistry, expressions of love in mineral form. "Rock cakes," Hagrid announced. "Grandpa." James and Lily shouted, running toward him. Hagrid set the tray down and knelt, the enormous, creaking kneel of a 70-year-old half-giant, and gathered both children in his arms. The arms that had held Harry. The arms that held everything. "Yeah?" Harry said. "Yeah?" Hagrid said, over the children's heads. "Thanks," Harry said. "For what?" Hagrid said. "For checking," Harry said. Hagrid's eyes filled. Because they always filled. Because the filling was the love, and the love was everything, and the everything was what Hagrid had been doing for 29 years. "Any time," Hagrid said. The children ate rock cakes. They were terrible. The children ate them anyway, because they were Grandpa's rock cakes. And Grandpa's rock cakes were part of the family the way the hut was part of the family. Not because they were good, but because they were his. The garden was warm. The forest was green. The hut was there, the same hut, always the same hut. The first home Harry had ever known, and the last home he would ever need. He was here. His children were here. His father was here. The man who checked was still checking. The crib was the physical artifact of the entire story. Hagrid built it in November 1981, the first night. Oak beams, too large for a baby, correctly sized for a Hagrid scale idea of what a baby might grow into. Carved with a knife that was too large for detail work, producing surfaces that were smooth in broad strokes and rough in the particulars. The crib held Harry from 15 months old to 17. No, longer than that. The crib held Harry every time he came home, because coming home meant sitting in the crib for a moment, feeling the oak under his hands, connecting to the thing that had been his first bed in his first home. At 30, Harry's children slept in the crib when they visited. James first, then Lily. The crib was still too large for them. Hagrid's scale remained Hagrid's scale, and the children treated it as an adventure, sleeping in the enormous wooden vessel that Grandpa had built for Daddy and that still smelled, faintly, of the oak and the forest and the particular. Indefinable quality of a thing that had been made with love by someone whose hands were too large for precision but exactly right for the kind of making that mattered. The crib is older than me, James said at 7, examining the carved headboard. The crib is older than me, Harry said. Hagrid built it the night he brought me home. Will it last forever? James said. Oak lasts, Harry said. Hagrid built it from heartwood, the centre of the tree. It's the strongest part. Like Grandpa, James said. Like Grandpa? Harry agreed. The crib would outlast all of them. The crib was oak heartwood, built by a half-giant who didn't know his own strength and who had put that strength into the building with the unconscious generosity of someone who built things the way he loved things. Too large, too strong, too much, and exactly right. November 1st, 1981, a man carries a baby across the sky on a borrowed motorcycle, crying the entire way. November 4th, 1981, the same man goes back. He finds the baby in a cupboard. He takes the baby home. The home is a hut. The man is a half-giant. The baby is the most famous child in the wizarding world. None of this matters. What matters is, he went back. He checked. He cared enough to check. 29 years of rock cakes and rock-solid love. 29 years of nightmares held and creatures taught, and a forest walked in the dark by a man and a boy who belonged to each other not because of blood or magic or destiny, but because one of them had once picked the other up and never put him down. Rubeus Hagrid was not qualified to raise a child. He raised the best one anyway. Because he checked. Because he cared. Because love doesn't need a wand. It just needs someone who shows up. Last thread Hagrid and Snape. The relationship between Hagrid and Snape was the relationship that nobody in the school understood and that both of them would have denied existed. Snape despised Hagrid. This was consistent with Snape's general approach to people. Snape despised most people, with a precision and thoroughness that suggested the despising was a professional skill. Hagrid was loud, emotional, incapable of secrecy, and possessed of the kind of open-hearted warmth that Snape found physically uncomfortable. Hagrid was terrified of Snape. This was consistent with most people's approach to Snape. Snape was cold, precise, hostile, and equipped with a conversational style that could reduce a person to ash without raising his voice. But they shared Harry. Snape was Harry's potions professor. Harry was in Snape's class for 6 years, and the Harry who walked into Snape's classroom in first year was not the Harry that Snape had expected. Not James Potter's arrogant copy, not the entitled celebrity, not the Gryffindor golden boy. The Harry who walked into Snape's classroom was Hagrid's son. Polite Hagrid's manners, not Malfoy manners, rougher, warmer, less calculated. Attentive, the forest training, the creature observation, the habit of watching before acting. Surprisingly competent at ingredients preparation because Hagrid had taught Harry to skin, gut, prepare and handle animal and plant materials since he was 5 years old. Your knife work is adequate, Snape said, in the first potions class, watching Harry prepare flobberworm mucus with the practiced efficiency of someone who had been handling creature parts for a decade. Hagrid taught me, Harry said. Obviously, Snape said. No school would teach that technique. It's field work, practical, unrefined, and... He paused. Effective. Thank you, Professor, Harry said. That was not a compliment, Snape said. It sounded like one, Harry said. Then you misheard, Snape said, and moved on. The dynamic between them was unlike the dynamic in any other timeline. Snape could not hate Hagrid's son the way he hated James Potter's son, because Hagrid's son did not carry James's swagger. The face was James's, the hair, the build, the expressions, but the behaviour was Hagrid's. The openness, the lack of pretense, the assumption that everyone was basically good until proven otherwise, which was an assumption that Snape found naive and also, in some deeply buried part of his emotional architecture, moving. The boy is tolerable, Snape told Dumbledore, in a conversation that Snape would have denied having. His preparation is crude but effective. His instincts with ingredients are unusually good. Hagrid raises him around creatures, Dumbledore said. Harry has been handling ingredients, living and dead, since before he could read. That explains the fieldwork technique, Snape said. It also explains his complete inability to follow written instructions. Harry learns by doing, Dumbledore said, not by reading. Which is a problem in a subject that requires precise measurement, Snape said. A problem you can solve, Dumbledore said, by teaching him. I am not in the business of customizing my instruction for individual students, Snape said. You are in the business of teaching Lily's son, Dumbledore said. The silence that followed was the silence of a wound being touched. His eyes, Snape said, very quietly, when he's concentrating on a potion. The expression, the focus. It's Lily's, Dumbledore said. Don't, Snape said. Don't say her name and his in the same sentence. They share the same eyes, Dumbledore said. And, I suspect, the same aptitude, given proper instruction. Snape taught Harry, not openly, not with the warmth that Hagrid offered or the engagement that Dumbledore provided. With the cold, demanding, completely effective instruction of a man who was the best potions master alive, and who was, despite everything he felt and everything he refused to feel, going to make sure that Lily's son could brew a potion properly. Your shrinking solution is passable, Snape said in third year. Passable? Harry said. It's the exact colour the book specifies. The book specifies a target. You've hit the target. Hitting the target is passable. Exceeding the target is competent. Understanding why the target is where it is, that's mastery. What's mastery look like? Harry said. It looks like your mother, Snape said. And then, realizing what he'd said, it looks like the best student I've ever taught. Who happened to be? He stopped. Get out of my classroom. Harry went. He went to the hut and he told Hagrid what Snape had said. Snape knew my mum, Harry said. Yeah, Hagrid said. They grew up together, near each other. Muggletown called Cokeworth. He cared about her, Harry said. More than cared, Hagrid said. But that's Snape's business, Harry, not mine to tell. He's teaching me properly, Harry said. Not nicely, he's still terrible. But properly. He's actually teaching me. Snape's a complicated man, Hagrid said. He's done terrible things. He's also trying, in his way, to do right by your mum. By teaching me potions, Harry said. By making sure Lily's son can do what Lily could do, Hagrid said. That's Snape's version of love. It's not pretty, but it's real. Your version is better, Harry said. My version involves rock cakes, Hagrid said. Everyone's version is better than Snape's. But both versions are love, Harry said. Yeah, Hagrid said. Both versions are love. The promise kept on the last page of this story, on the last Saturday, which was never the last because the Saturdays went on. Harry sat in the hut with Hagrid and thought about promises. Hagrid had made one promise, on a doorstep at 3 a.m, 29 years ago. Take care of him, Sirius had said, and Hagrid had not said the words, had not said I promise or I will or any of the formal language of commitment. He'd taken the baby. The taking was the promise. He'd kept it. Through the hiding and the discovery and the Dumbledore tutoring and the nightmares and the forest and the school and the war and the death and the coming back. Through rock cakes and terrible tea and a crib made from oak heartwood and a hut at the edge of the forest that was too small for 2 people and exactly right for a family. "Ah," Harry said. "Yeah?" Hagrid said. "You kept the promise," Harry said. "What promise?" Hagrid said. "The one Sirius made you make," Harry said. "On the doorstep. Take care of him." "Sirius didn't make me promise," Hagrid said. "Sirius said take care of him. I took care of Yer." "That's a promise," Harry said. That's just what Yer do," Hagrid said. "Someone gives Yer a baby, Yer take care of it." "That's not a promise. That's being a person." Harry looked at Hagrid, at the man who had been his father for 29 years, and who would be his father for as many more years as the world allowed, at the enormous, tearful, rock-cake-making, dragon-loving, broken-wanded, half-giant person who had done the most extraordinary thing Harry had ever encountered, loved a child completely, without conditions, without reservation, without the qualifications that the world said you needed. "You're the best person I know," Harry said. "Don't be daft," Hagrid said. I'm just Hagrid." "I know," Harry said. "That's what I said." Hagrid's eyes filled. Because they always filled. Because the love was always there, always present, always too big for the container. "Eat your rock cake," Hagrid said. "It's terrible," Harry said. "Eat it anyway," Hagrid said. Harry ate the rock cake. It was terrible. It was also, in the way that terrible things made with love were, the best thing in the world. The hut was warm, the forest was outside, the fire was lit. He was home.